All right, good evening. Welcome to the RSU 5 Board of Directors meeting. We are here at the Durham Community School. You'll see it's a little bit different setup this evening. We'll get to that shortly. We have all of our board members here this evening, which is great. And we are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Flags behind us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so the first thing we still have our minutes on here before we have the adjustment. So consideration, we need a motion and consideration and approval of the minutes for the March 21st, 2018, March 28th, 2018, and April 11th, 2018 as presented, barring any errors or omissions. Sarah, can't see her behind the screen, but she motioned and Maddie seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? None opposed, thank you. Okay, so adjustments to the agenda. We actually have two adjustments this evening. You want to do them?
Yes, we're going to have an OM presentation under Good News and Recognition by the high school OM team, and then we're also going to talk about the bleachers for the new track and field under Unfinished Business.
All right, so we're going to start number 6, Good News and Recognition, with the Freeport High School Odyssey of the Mind group. And so you'll see the board. We're actually going to go out here so we can see the performance as well, but they're gonna set it up for us. So.
like it's.
Oh, and it could be me, but.
All right. Did we just end up with 12 board members somehow? 12 mics?
Yeah, Jenny
Good.
said we had extra.
So now that'll be tied in. Okay. Okay. Everybody ready? Okay, so in addition to the entertainment of getting to watch their performance of their long-term problem, their request to us was if the district is willing and able to donate $2,500 towards their costs. Are you not hearing me?
I don't know, it stays on, but can you bring it closer?
It's funny because I feel like it's really loud. Is that better? Okay. Zip it in the back. So their request is their request of us is to put $2,500 to help defray the costs of their travel expenses to head out to Iowa Memorial Day weekend. Is that right? Of this year, so just a month away. And my understanding is they are fundraising for the balance of their costs. So they've come to us with a request to see if we would help kick in towards their fundraising. As they mentioned earlier, and Melanie mentioned, this is something that, other than having a coordinator who supports all the teams across the district, they don't really get any financial support from the district for this program. It's all just their materials and their time and volunteer coaches. So I am a firm believer in Odyssey of the Mind. I have had 2 kids go through it, and it's an amazing problem-solving process just to watch them just learning how to be teammates in sort of a non-sports related manner, discussing it. And, the script by committee made me laugh out loud because I've seen that in action, and sometimes it's not pretty. But, they walk away with a really good time, and I think everybody really enjoys it. So wanted to put it out to the board members to see what their thoughts were about. We've confirmed with Michelle Lichtai that this is something that we could do in this year's budget without, taking away from another academic program. So it is something that if the will of the board was that we support this, then we could help them out with that. So.
I have a quick question on this. What does the $2,500 represent in relation to the whole amount that you need?
I think it's about a quarter of the cost.
A quarter of the
is that
whole
what you're
cost?
asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. A piece, right?
Okay, gotcha. I would be willing to make a motion to support for half of it, not just a quarter of it.
So this would be the motion, and you tell me if this is what you were saying. Consideration and approval to provide $5,000 in funding for the first place Freeport High School Odyssey of the Mind team to go to the World Finals. Would that be your motion?
I think that's exactly my motion.
Okay. Is there a second? Yeah. Candy. So I'm going to look to Michelle because we didn't have her look at more than $2,500. Sure.
So yes, I finished up a projection this morning, or actually this afternoon, and I do believe that 5,000 could be covered.
Okay. So, yeah, Lindsay.
Just a question for you guys. Have you already raised the other 3/4 of the money, and would that be extraneous, or would that help you get there?
That would help us get there. I think that we have.
Could you go to the mic just so people at home can hear you? so far, yeah.
Okay.
That was probably a week ago.
Melanie is voting the process. She knows exactly how much, but it's around $2,000 that we have raised already.
Okay.
So total is 9,000, so there's still a little extra. Definitely support.
Okay.
Have we ever funded anything like this previously?
Michelle looked into this.
So I looked and looked, but I don't know how we have funded it in the past. I thought maybe we actually wrote a check to Odyssey of the Mind. I checked all of our vendors, and I can't find where we've done this in the past, but it doesn't mean we didn't, because we could have written the check to the person that needs to pay for it all.
Pay for all the
rather
travel.
than directly to Odyssey of the Mind. And so I didn't have any reference to point to check to see who that might have been.
So I think we have, but I couldn't tell you the amount. But
Right.
that is my understanding.
And I
that
think it
if
was probably
they-
a
if-
while ago.
Right. If they reach Worlds, that you have given something towards the fundraising.
Kate has a question.
Naomi knows.
Oh, I thought that Beth Parker's team was the last one to go to Worlds.
Did they go to Worlds?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the principals of Mass Landing and the middle school contributed to a prior team that went. So
Yeah.
they had some budget available for that.
Yeah. Okay. Valley?
So Michelle, would the money come out of contingency for this year? So the current budget has contingency money left? Is that
Yes.
what you're thinking? Okay.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, I do want to say that I know a lot of teams who do not go to Worlds because they do not have the funding. So there have been many teams that have gone as far as these guys have gone, and they haven't participated at Worlds because of the cost. So I would be totally in favor of supporting the team.
All right. Does the board feel ready? Any other discussion? Board ready to have a vote on this? Okay, so the motion on the floor is to contribute $5,000 towards their fundraising efforts. All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Good luck, guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so poor Will has to follow that. Durham Community School update. Good news and recognition.
I'm looking for at least 3,000 from this. If I leave now. Yeah. So you're going to have to swing around again, sorry, because it's up on the screen. And I wasn't sure. First of all, I had no idea there was going to be such a festival feel to the meeting tonight. As we came in, I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? So I will tell you I don't believe there's any aliens or weapons involved in this part of it. So this is just good news and recognition, and we look each time to what might be just a different piece to share with you as an update. And so the sort of focus on this is just a short piece around aspects of community that exist here at Durham Community School. So as the head of our PTA, and so we have wonderful support from the PTA. They fundraise, they support enrichment, field work, and a number of community events. So it has Halloween parade. As a community, there's not many places to trick or treat. So on the Saturday around Halloween time, there's a big opportunity for children to trick or treat here at the building, and do a fun fair in the springtime as part of the 5th grade fundraiser for the 6th graders when they go to camp. But then there's a range of enrichment that they support across the school. A couple of examples from this year. We have an artist in residence who comes every 2 years, Michael Wingfield. He's a Portland-based musician, and the focus on that, it comes during February, part of Black History Month. Talks about sort of triangular trade and the importance of music, and how the sort of stories and narratives are conveyed through music, and especially through drumming. The 7th and 8th graders have a week-long residency with Mr. Wingfield, and then do a school-wide performance to sort of show what they have learned in a week. And it's incredible how far he gets them in basically 5 sessions. But every section of 7th and 8th graders then performs at that assembly. Another artist in residence piece that the PTA support is around Spirit Series. This is a group who use sort of classic stories around sort of strong morals, sort of studies, if you like. This is around Socrates, and the 6th graders do this, and then they perform down to the 5th and 4th grade. So partly it's around the students seeing what they're going to be working towards themselves as they move up through the grades, but also in Seeking Socrates, it's very timely for 6th grade. It's very much about doing the right thing when those around you are putting pressure on you to make different choices. There's other enrichment pieces that they support with the lower grades as well. We have a number of volunteers from the community that support us. I'm just sort of putting a spotlight on one. Mr. Grant Connors is a grandparent of 3 children here at the school. He actually started out when his eldest grandson was in 2nd grade. He's now an 8th grader. The grandson, that is, not Mr. Connors. And he is a retired science teacher and brings us so much. It went from helping out with 2nd grade with one project. He now comes weekly on a Wednesday. He's set up in the Discovery Lab, and the focus of his work varies by the different grade level clusters in the school. So there may be a focus for K2 one week, 3-4 the next week, 5-6 the following week, as they sort of cycle through. A number of the students really, well, I would say all the students really enjoy when they have a day with an opportunity to work with Mr. Connors for an hour, because it's something outside of their science curriculum, but it's really sort of hands-on, getting involved with some different scientific phenomena. Currently, he's working with them around bringing in some chickens that are going to be hatching next week. There's a couple of community-based service projects each year led by our student council, and the way the student council works is at one point students would run for it, but then really the focus was around if you wanted to be involved and help out, you could help out. And so it's project by project. It's not an election or anything like that. Students who are willing to give up some time to help with specific projects get involved with the student council during that time. And these are our oldest students from middle school. So each Thanksgiving time there's a pass, which takes place where the whole school is involved, and then around Christmas time there's sharing of a large number of gifts are donated from family members that then get distributed around local communities. Then obviously one of the advantages of a pre-K through 8 school is we have a number of cross-grade opportunities. So there's just a few slides here to share with you some of the things that are taking place this year. We do Peaceful Bus several times, started the school year with a picnic, and Peaceful Bus, we meet by bus. And so the children travel pre-K through 8 on the buses, and this gives an opportunity for them to meet as their bus cohort and work around the culture that exists on the bus. So we start the year with a picnic by buses. They have other Peaceful Bus meetings during the year. This was the winter Peaceful Bus session, which was outside, as you can see, in the snow. I'm not sure quite how peaceful it was, but it was fun, that was for sure. Just recently we've had 1st graders making audiobooks for kindergarten. So it's a great way for them to practice their fluency with their reading. They then hand off the audiobook on iPads with the books themselves, so the children can sort of like follow along the book as it's being read to them. Oops, sorry. That's not so helpful. Yeah, just push upgrade, 3 hours. And so you can see a note there, I think, from that class, Ms. Begley's class. To kindergartners, we made you a new audio book. We hope you enjoy it. We have different classes who will do reading buddies, and that is a big piece around sort of encouraging each other and focusing in on specific skills at the different levels. Here we have some 7th grade math students who will share often with the younger children in terms of giving them some sense of some of the things that they're working on in upper grades. So This was marble roller coasters they've been working on with the polynomials class and auto rotators that they will then test, and the children will help gather data as they compare the different products that were designed and made. 7th graders recently in their work on climate change, their audience was 5th graders who do some pieces around alternative energy as part of their 5th grade science curriculum. What's interesting about this, the 7th graders last year they had presented to parents. This year the focus became 5th grade, and as part of their work they were asked to identify what are aspects of their learning that really engages them, what are things that they should incorporate into their presentations that they identify as being engaging to learners. And they really did a really good job of identifying. We perhaps should be using it for our evaluation system, but they gave us some great ideas, and then they really followed through on it. Then also, we're fortunate in 3rd grade to do a Around the World project in December. And the last few years we've been fortunate enough to have exchange students at Freeport High School who come out and share about the countries that they are from and where they're living, and sort of bring that perspective also to our students. Some other examples, middle school students working with primary grades in the gardens, 5th graders supporting 2nd graders. We're currently hatching salmon eggs, and they have a rotation where they come up with the 2nd graders come up to their scientific observations. They're gathering their data over time at the same in parallel with the 5th graders, and 8th grade mentors working with younger children. So just a few pieces to share with you around some of the aspects of how we try and build and take advantage of the community within in a community school. And I'm looking for about $3,000. All right.
I'd like to make a motion.
Any questions? Oh, yes.
Lindsay.
I love that picture. How hard was that?
This?
Yeah.
How hard was it?
Yeah, to get everybody all lined up like that.
So, well, for me it was remarkably easy. But what that was, we actually had some of our 8th grade math students working with Mr. Bryn, and we said, we have 430 children, this many staff. We need you to design out shape of a heart with DCS. And so the students actually worked out the ratio and proportion it would have to be. They then went out and marked it on the field. And so when we went out with the whole school, we had it set up, and they had calculated it'd be this many younger children, this many older children, taking a little more space. And so we would just say, all right, so K2, you're going to go stand from here to here. 3, 4, you're here to here. 5, 6, you're here to here. And 7, 8, you're there. In fact, it was the younger children with the letters in the middle. So the students actually figured out what it should be. And when we went out there, it was incredible how accurate they were. It fitted perfectly.
Wow.
I'm glad I asked.
Yeah.
That's a very
Cool.
impressive
Yeah.
project. Cool.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Will? Thank you. Okay, public comment. So we just ask if you have something to share, if you just get up to the mic, which I think you might have just turned off, so you'll probably turn that back on, and just let us know your name and where you're from.
Great. Hi, I'm Carol Grimm, Freeport. I have 2 middle schoolers. Ms. Foley stated in a recent editorial, proficiency-based practices are good for all students. I'm here to let you know that statement doesn't hold true for my children who have been living over the past 3 years with proficiency, and also many others I've spoken to. Currently, in the form it's being used, PBE is not good for all. 2 of the big areas of concern are grading and retaking of tests. Grading 1 to 100 must remain intact. This cannot be phased out. Our college-bound students are competing nationwide in the admissions process. As noted in the State House testimony, PB transcripts at a Boston university are put into a different pile. Colleges will not advertise that they are doing this. They want as many applicants as possible. This treatment of PB transcripts in the admission process creates a disadvantage to our students applying, not only for college, but more importantly, scholarship money on academic merit. The other area of concern is retaking of tests. Certainly at the high school level, the board needs to relook at this approach. How does retaking tests prepare either career or college-bound students for the realities of the real world? We make mistakes, we learn from those mistakes. I hear students ask teachers, even before they take a test, when can they retake it? How does the retaking of tests prepare students with proper study habits to succeed in college? There are no retakes. There's no do-overs in college academia. In most workplaces, if a mistake is made, you learn from it. It's on the review, and it could reflect your salary increase. I would ask the board to take a closer look at these two issues related to PBE. In the form it's in right now, it's really not helping all students. In fact, we don't know the outcome yet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cap Wallingford, and this is my first school board meeting.
Welcome.
Thank you. I live over off of Flying Point. I'll be honest with you, I cannot believe you just gave $5,000 to the Odyssey of the Mind. 7 children. When I don't know how many children are going in the 8th grade this year to Quebec. I don't have an 8th grader, but last year my daughter worked herself to pay, I think it was perhaps $653 for her to go to Quebec in a group of, I don't know, about 56 to 60 students. I'll be honest, 7 kids. And I'm not even sure what that was. I need to look it up. I know a lot of you are supportive of it, but do they really need to go all the way to Iowa for this next level? That's a lot of money. Just a thought. And a lot of kids go to Space Camp next year. I don't know if we give money to Space Camp. Did that happen? So I'm just thinking of 7 kids, and it's $5,000, and my taxes went up 4% this year. So I'm just a little shaky, and it's my first school board meeting, so I'm like, should I be going to another one? But mainly the reason I came is proficiency grading. And quite frankly, my eldest daughter goes to Cumberland. She has a superintendent's agreement in place. She chose to go for the program, the IB program, which Freeport didn't offer. She has worked so hard. She travels an hour commute every day. It's been so difficult. She just did her last 2 years of high school there, transferring, and that was her own choice, which I'm so proud of her. So we have met with admissions, and we are very thankful. We've gotten a lot of support. She's gotten into 6 different colleges. So I had the opportunity to meet with 2 admissions folks this weekend. They do not consider the proficiency-based easy for them to understand. If my daughter didn't get a large amount of money for the presidential scholarship, she would not be attending an out-of-state school. She hasn't actually made her final decision yet. But that was my biggest question to admissions officers. This is what my Freeport children have. And my understanding now is it's going to be 0 to 100. I just wanted a confirmation. Is that a commitment, or is that just putting it out there for the next 6 months? Are kids going to be in this particular 0 to 100 grading system? Because everything I read, I'm a little confused on where it is at. So it's just that basic. Has the school board voted? We're going from 0 to 100 for grading, and the children know what they're going to get, and this is a commitment for how many years? Or is this just something that's going to happen till the end of this year, and that's going to start all over again next fall? Because it's very stressful for all involved. And when my children ask me and I say, I really don't understand, I feel a little foolish. So I'm just curious, is this a commitment 0 to 100 grading? And from what grade to what grade will that start? And how long was that commitment for Freeport? RSU, are we RSU 5? And I'm sorry, I'm just getting over a little concussion here. So lots of numbers are lovely. So those are my questions. But at the same time, my God, you guys volunteer and you're awesome. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Cynthia right there has a paper. There you go. She's on it.
So, am I speaking into this enough this time? Okay, so I'm Pam Barry Santos. You probably recognize me by now. This is a follow-up from the proficiency-based education workshop from last week, just a couple of quick follow-ups. I know somebody spoke right after I spoke, saying that they were very much in favor of proficiency-based education, and they started talking about Halldale and RSU2 and how they're already graduating students with proficiency-based, and they went on to tout the one magic student that is maybe supposedly going to MIT. And I just want to make sure we're all putting things in perspective. One student can do excellent in any school system. That is not something to say, yay, proficiency-based works or it doesn't work. Basing it on one kid's ability to get into one school, whether or not it's true. Also, Halldale, their proficiency-based scores, they're in the 20-something percentile for mathematics. They're in the 50th percentile for education, for English, for their state scores. So I want to make sure that as we're talking about proficiency-based and we're touting it and we're hearing people tout it, we don't selectively hear things. Halldale, I don't want us following Halldale. Halldale is not an example for us. If we want to follow a proficiency-based system and we want to talk about what's succeeding, let's find one that's actually succeeding and not follow somebody because one student from that system went to MIT or maybe going to MIT. We don't know. Maybe their parents went to MIT. Maybe they're Bowdoin professors. Maybe the kid took college courses. We have no idea if that kid is going, why they're going. But based on the proficiency-based scores, most of the kids at Halldale are not going to MIT. For all the states are doing it, somebody held up a map and said, oh, 44 states are doing it. I found a map too. The states that are actually really doing proficiency-based, Maine is one of them, New Hampshire, and then there are a few others. I moved here from Arizona. Arizona's here saying, hey, we're doing it. I moved away from Arizona because of the education system. You might have heard about them in the news. The teachers aren't very happy right now. There is no funding. When you look at some other studies that aren't being funded by Nellie Mae or Greater School Partnership, you'll see Arizona down here is claiming they have 54% proficiency. When you look at their scores compared to international standards, they're really at 29. Oregon, another one of the states, they claim that they have student proficiency of 64%. Comes out at 32 when you're comparing apples to apples. What states are claiming in terms of what they're achieving under proficiency, they're claiming whatever they want to claim. They're defining their own proficiency. That proficiency is not matching up. They were saying there was a standard deviation of almost 2 grade levels for what is considered proficient based on proficiency based on what states are reporting. Colorado, they're claiming 80% of their students are proficient. According to the studies, 35%. Iowa, 76 is what they claimed, and they're at 39. These are all states that are touting that they're proficiency based in some aspect. Right now, we're claiming 59, and we're coming in at 44. Massachusetts did the best. They claimed 52. They're actually at 57. They underdid it, underrepresented. And you know what? They aren't doing proficiency-based according to this. So I'm not saying proficiency-based is evil. I don't know. I can't find any evidence-based research on this. And I've asked repeatedly. I haven't heard anything other than this principal X number of years ago promoted it. I don't know. Was that principal getting money from some of the different groups that are out there, because we've been hearing about that? I don't know. Maybe they're just very behind it. But if we're going to consider it, if the kids are going to walk out with a transcript that says XYZ proficiency-based, I'd like to know that it was based on some evidence that it's actually good for the students, other than a bunch of people just saying, hey, everybody's doing it, so let's do it. And I just posted an article on the site, a teacher, this is on the rsu5parents.org site. There's a teacher that just put an awesome article out there about what they're seeing in terms of motivation for the students. And just like everything else, it's all anecdotal because we don't have any research that says anything. But if you guys could read it, I'd appreciate it, because it really points out some of the deficiencies in the proficiency-based system. A lot of what the parents are talking about, the motivation, what one parent just mentioned about retakes. In my job, I don't get to retake stuff. I don't get to decide when I'm going to finish something. And a lot of what I'm hearing about the proficiency-based is, well, the students can redo this, and they can redo this, and they can, they can put stuff off. In the real world, if you want to keep your job, if you want to pass your college exams, you don't get to choose. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more? Okay, thank you. 8, superintendent's report.
So I'd like to continue with the good news after the OM and Will's presentation about the sense of community here. The track and field is coming along. We're getting ready for the grand opening on Friday, May 18th. The arch has now been installed, and we're just hoping that everyone will be able to come out for this event. It's going to start at 2:45 with some of our high school music people performing from the band, and then at 3 o'clock we'll have the opening remarks, and followed by the celebratory run with Joni. And so that's less than a month away now. The work on the mural, well, we're thinking that it begins tomorrow. I think they've arrived here in town in Freeport, and that work will begin. And we've asked for volunteers to help paint the mural, which will be taking place on May 5th from 10 to 2. We still have some spaces, so for anyone who has an artistic flair and would like to participate, I urge you to contact Cynthia Alexander, the assistant superintendent.
But you don't have to be artistic to do it, right? It's paint by numbers. Right, so
It is,
you
but
don't have to like freehand it, just you might lose people on that.
The regionalization Part 2 application that you guys voted on recently was submitted and approved by the DOE. And so we have met again on Monday. We began drafting a budget, and the next step for the board will be for us to have a further discussion at the May 9th meeting, for you to consider approving the interlocal agreement. And if at that point you vote for that, that vote is more binding, and we would then take the next step would be for the referendum vote in November. Yesterday, Melissa Huey from Drummond Woodsum met with the administrative team to provide some professional development around 2 areas, bullying and also just evaluating staff. And so there was lots of good discussion and clarification around these 2 issues, and I bring that up because I think recently a couple of you asked about what kind of training do we do around bullying. So that's just one example of something that we did just yesterday. The Proficiency-Based Committee did meet yesterday. We spent a lot of the time, most of the time, debriefing the board workshop and talked about the possible revision to the grading policy that you'll be discussing later on tonight. Ray Grogan, the Freeport Middle School principal, also shared that over break he visited several colleges with his son, and reported that I think he asked 5 colleges where they went to visit and talk to the admissions people about, a transcript utilizing a 1 to 4, and they all said that it would in no way impact the child getting into the college, and one system even said that they found it easier to distinguish the top students who have a transcript that is proficiency-based. And so at our next meeting, which we don't have the date scheduled for, but will be before the end of the year, we'll be kind of trying to look at the self-assessment that the state provided and then determine some needed next steps that will probably go into a board goal for next year. And resignations since my last report, Kate Papke, an ed tech at Freeport Middle School, resigned effective March 23rd. And then lastly, I will end my report by announcing that Patty McLaughlin, fifth grade teacher here at Durham Community School, will be retiring at the end of the year. We wish her well and thank her for many years of service to both Durham and to the RSU.
Okay, thank you. 8B, Administrator Reports, Finance.
Okay, this is your purple form in there. You'll see that if you look at the bottom line, we have like 33% left. As I told you earlier today, I did a projection. The 33% doesn't include the summer months. It would actually bring it down closer to 29% when you include the summer pay for teachers. And as we've spoken before, and maybe to the new members that haven't, we do try to encumber as much as we can, like we do for utilities, some of the maintenance we will encumber for, but we can't encumber wages. Our system doesn't allow us to do that. I'm not sure why, but it doesn't. But hopefully the new system that we're trying to get into next year will do that. So when I did my projection this morning, we're going to be just fine, which is why I say, no problem with the $5,000 there. And it will keep us right where the state requires us to be at the 3% undesignated fund balance. So I just want to let you know that we're doing just fine right now. On the HR side, just to give you a little update, in case anybody's asking, open enrollment is going to be starting May 1st. That's for all of our benefits, and we're adding, thank you to the Finance Committee, FSA, which is flexible spending accounts, and dependent care accounts, which is something that some of our employees have been asking for and begging for, that we will now be able to offer to them. Any questions? Kate.
Michelle, could you explain what encumbrances are on the sheet?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So what we try to do is project what the year is going to be for spending, and at the beginning of the year, if we know that we're going to have 12 months of telephone bill, we'll encumber the full 12 months. And as we pay off a month, then we're encumbering 11 months. And as we pay off another month, then we're encumbering 10 months. So that's what the encumbrance is. It means that we're holding it aside saying, we have to pay this money. Don't spend it.
So pretty much, debt service, anything like that, you encumber, but obviously the biggest number in our budget is the salaries, but it doesn't allow you to do that.
That is correct.
Any other questions for Michelle? Okay, thank you. Unfinished business. So this is where we are going to insert the other adjustment to the agenda around the bleachers. So this was a pretty tight turnaround. So as part of the track and field project, as we were coming towards the end of the base project, there was discussion and interest in seeing if we could include bleachers in the project based on what we have remaining in contingency, if there's additional fundraising that could have been done. So those bleachers were sent out to bid. I don't know when they were sent out to bid, but the bids were received yesterday. The committee, the the Freeport, our committee for the track and field, there's too many names, met this morning to discuss, we discussed the whole project and the current status, but spent a good amount of time discussing the bleachers and the feasibility of that based on the numbers. We did receive, hold on just a second. I printed out all the numbers. So we did receive 2 bids for the bleacher system. The first we're required to go with the low bid. And I always look at John during these things because he'll nod emphatically if I mess it up. So we are required to go with the low bid for this. And the low bid for this project on the bleachers piece of it was was Material Handling's, what's it called? Okay, Material Handling Sales, Inc. Their base project, which was bleachers of 532 seats, was $128,339. Add alternate we asked them to price was the press box at the top of the bleachers to complete the system, and that came in at $70,958. For a total of $199,000, give or take. The second bid that we received was about $25,000 higher than that. So if the board wanted to move forward with it, we would be moving forward with the Material Handling's bid. So that's the cost. The sources for those funds, there is about $112,000 left in contingency, which is money that we still have from the project that we funded that we haven't spent yet. Because as you guys may recall, when we did this project, we set a certain percentage aside in the contingency to cover the, what ifs that happen in any construction project. So there's 112 in there, including some an escrow that the town of Freeport is currently holding that will come back to us shortly once they do a final walkthrough. The Tri-Town Track and Field Committee that did the fantastic job of fundraising so much of this project, they also have $69,000 currently in the bank that they could put towards this project, as well as another $68,000 in pledges outstanding. So folks that have said that they would support the project, some of them were over a couple of years, so they haven't been collected yet, but they all of that 68 would be due by the end of calendar year 2018. So all in, that would be about $249,000 of money to support the project. The original $200,000 that was bid, there was a last-minute change today that included some additional concrete work that the engineers felt would be prudent to do in terms of the project. So that brings up the cost of the bleachers with the press box and that concrete to about $217,000. And then there's also some additional spending we need to use for the finishing of the track, right? So we do have some work that needs to be done this spring. They'll be putting the second coat of the turf down, the track down, and some cleanup items. So there'll be some costs associated with that. So Michelle and I talked about it today, and we felt like if we allocated $10,000 of those costs, we're looking at about $227,000 to finish the project with bleachers and the press box. While any fundraising effort, if you've ever been involved with those, you know that there are some pledges that don't necessarily turn into cash. Fred and John feel confident that between the cash they have in the bank and their pledges, that they could put $120,000 towards the project. So that's about $232,000 of cash towards the project and a project cost of about $227,000 to finish the track and field with the bleachers and the press box. So the reason we added this to the agenda tonight, sort of on quick notice, is whoever wrote the bid said we'll tell them tomorrow if we're going to be taking the bid. We have a tight timeline. If construction, as we've all learned, takes longer than we thought, always expect it to, and these guys are all very busy, and we have our first home game under the lights for Freeport High School football on August 31st. So if we want these bleachers in place by then, we really need to execute this contract pretty quick. So we wanted to bring it to the board to discuss the idea around are we comfortable using the contingency and the remaining funds from the Tri-Town Track and Field for the bleachers to get those in place? There was some discussion at the committee level this morning. 532 seats is what this bid included. I think original project included bleachers up to 750, but from a cost perspective, we sort of scaled that back. We did ask the folks that provided the bid, could you add some more seats? What would the cost be? Because, the discussion was around, we feel like this is probably once we have these are what we're with, right? So it's not easy to add on later. It's not quite a modular system. So there was an option to add an additional 90 seats, so basically 2 more rows. So the set that they spec'd for us is, it's about 100 feet long, the full system, including the stairs and the ramp. It's fully ADA accessible. It has front seats for wheelchair and companion seating in the front. It's raised up 40 inches off the ground, and it's 12 rows deep. There was discussion about they could add 2 more rows to make it 14, which would add another 90 seats, and that's at a cost of about $30,000. So, based on the money we have right now, we could afford the 532 and have a little bit extra for some incidentals that always come up. But we did want to see, what are the other options if we wanted to increase the capacity of those bleachers. Craig couldn't be here tonight, but he provided us, and I think you guys have all seen this in the past when we've talked about bleachers. This is the bleacher seating capacity for and attendance for the area schools that have fields with bleachers. They go as high as 1,500 in Cape, which is huge. Greeley's up to 800, Old Orchard's up to 800, Lake Region 750, Poland is 500, Socapee's 600. The thought was that the 532 could probably support 95% of the events that would be happening on the track and field. Really it would be the 3 or 4 Friday night football games, maybe a playoff soccer game, if we got really far into the playoffs. But most of our events would be covered by the 532. But we did want to see, if we wanted to increase that capacity a little bit, what would it look like based on the space that we have available? And, we could bump that to 620 for an additional $30,000. So we just wanted to get some thoughts from the board around appetite for the bleachers in general, and if there was, if there was a desire to look at that higher capacity, that amount would presume that the district would be kicking in $20,000 to $25,000 of that cost. Maddie?
I think you probably know where I stand. I think I should recuse myself from the discussion and any vote on this since I'm on that committee, the fundraising committee.
So have we, because we've always had a board member on the committee that didn't necessarily, because Beth...
Right, but she wasn't officially on that committee and I am.
Okay. Fair enough. Yes.
When did this go out to bid? And why weren't we told it was going out to bid?
I think we were told. It was one of the things that we kept getting questions on, how much would bleachers cost? And we don't know until we bid it. So we don't have to take either if we don't want to. But
who was the board was told that it was going out to bid?
At the I think the last time we did the update on the track project in total, one of the things we talked about as potential, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was the idea around bleachers.
John remembers
too. So the bids went out about 3 weeks ago, and it is a lot later than we actually intended. When we last talked with the board, I think we were talking, we wanted to get the bids out in January, on not such a tight time frame when we were doing updates, and we were going to look at doing the bleachers based on what contingency funds were left. The wild card was we were going through these negotiations with the contractor on delays and overage and the claim for the additional time and those things. So we didn't really push to get the bleacher bid out because we didn't know what our target value was, because we didn't know what type of credit change order we might be receiving from the contractor. And of course, they had already countered with a claim for additional funds. So we kind of, it wasn't the top priority for the design team or the construction management team to bid the bleachers until we settled the issue with the timeliness of the contract for the track and field and softball and all of that. So it went out about 3 weeks ago. It's a quick turnaround. We apologize. And honestly, we should have gotten this on your agenda so it was on a timely manner so you had all the information. That was just a miss on our part. We've just been running a little bit busy.
Valley. So John, is it normal to have only 2 companies bid? That seems like a low number. I don't know if what we got
We had a third.
is representative of what people get.
We invited a third that didn't submit a bid. It's a pretty small market, and there's not a lot of systems and not a lot of installers, and it's a tight, busy market, and given the time that we sent it out, it's likely people are busy. So often, there's only a couple manufacturers, and they often will partner with a regional installer that they have, and they submit the bid. So Material Handling Sales is the installer, and the system is a Dan Clayton bleacher system. So Material Handling Sales is a licensed kind of partner with them as an installer.
And may I ask, what was the other bid, the higher bid that we didn't hear about?
The higher bid was a company from the name E&D Installers. Their bid was also very, lacked a lot of the detail that we would have needed to actually award to them. So even if they had been a low bid, we might have had a few issues. We would have requested a lot more information. Their package was very incomplete, would be the way I'd describe it.
It didn't even have the number of seats that were included in their bid. It was 500 or more, but we don't even know how many more.
I'm just trying to assess where this bid, that is the low bid that we're currently evaluating, is a good bid, because we don't have anything to compare it with.
It's the market. I mean, honestly, it's a fair bid. We did send it out to 3 firms. We used a full specification. It was, the same package went to everyone. This wasn't even a negotiated deal. Everyone got the same spec book. Everyone got the same set of plans. It was advertised out to the 3 companies, 3 manufacturers that we felt provided a system that matched our specification. And we received these 3 back. It's a really tight construction market right now. And we're kind of late in the game, honestly.
Jeremy?
Could you just generally describe the style of seating, and is it old aluminum benches type things, or what it'll be like?
Yeah, it's a completely aluminum system. It is the type that has an aluminum frame underneath that are angles that support the system. It has an angled, aluminum seat, has aluminum picks on the back. It's pretty much all aluminum system, aluminum handrails, aluminum framing. It'll have a long life, low corrosion, all galvanized fasteners and stainless steel fasteners. It's actually the same system we just put in up the road at Bowdoin. Different installer, but same manufacturer.
I thought I saw somewhere about the color of the seating really affecting how cold they are, and since we are in really, I saw are they just silver aluminum, or is it? Do you have a choice of colors?
No, we did not go with anything that was coated with a coloring. It's the silver aluminum that almost all of the other high schools have, almost all facilities have as a system. You can powder coat, but then you start to risk that coating's coming off and coating failures and other issues. I wouldn't recommend going colored.
Okay, I have a 6-7 question. Did someone else want to go first? Okay. What's going on with high school graduation, and what size is the audience for that? Because I've been hearing over the years a lot of controversy about where the high school graduation is.
He just ran away.
Oh, run away!
I gotta recuse myself from that. I have
Okay.
honestly no idea.
Well, I mean, I
They
remember
hold
saying that
532.
The
Yeah.
high school gym holds 700 people, and that apparently isn't enough to hold a graduation ceremony, so.
I think
If
there
it
are
was-
multiple reasons why we're not doing outdoor graduation more than, I think seating's one of them. And I think it's probably one of the primary ones. And I'm probably going to ask Jen to come up, because even with 600 seats, that wouldn't be enough.
Well, I mean, you could put chairs out if we needed additional seating. I think the issue is if the weather's bad, you have to move them in, and the gym is
it's not big
enough for, unless
What
you
about
limit.
a tent? I mean, how
You
much
can't
does it
tent.
cost to rent out?
You can't tent because of the turf. Do you see? I'd ask that question.
Tent poles!
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
So
can't do
I'll
that.
just add that even if you ordered a tent just in case, that's a huge expense. You could have a beautiful day and you don't need the tent. If you don't rent the tent and your plan is to go inside, currently the maximum number of tickets that each student could get would be 5 tickets. So at the Merrill, where we hold graduation right now, it's an unlimited number of tickets, and the average number of ticket requests is anywhere from 10 to 15, the highest being 30. I think every cousin came for that student, which is wonderful. There's no limit. It's a kind of massive space, and as our numbers grow, I think there's a lot of value to graduating on a field. I also think that the Merrill has worked out incredibly well for us. There's been positive response from the students. It's a beautiful ceremony. I think in my experience of outdoor graduations, they can be incredibly challenging, not just rain, but heat. There's lots of factors, but also that you can't put a tent on turf.
So 10, those are all good reasons, but I was just kind of fixating on the number for some reason. So like 10 tickets times 500 students.
Well, they're
No,
not
they're
all
not
graduating.
500. Oh, they're 100. So I'm just, what are we talking for like?
So our average class is about 150 students, and so if they wanted to invite parents and
It's a-
2 sets of grandparents, the uncle can't come.
Right. Okay. All right, I just want to make sure we thought about that.
Yep. It's a good idea.
Thank you.
Valerie.
So I have a question about the press box. Why is the press box so important? What's
box.
Yeah.
I will tell you that we talked about the press box, and for Craig, that is, he would rather have that than more seats. To him, it's very, I mean, it's what houses all of the sound system. It's where they're able to video, because they are required to video every football game. It allows them to have a good setup for that. I'm sure there's other reasons.
Yeah, those are great reasons. And Craig can speak better than I can about this, but also commentating of games, especially football, is incredibly hard to do if you don't have a press box. And so they're able to house the sound system in there too. That's a big piece.
So am I hearing that without the press box, there isn't any place other than this box to put the equipment? I mean, we would have no equipment if we had no press box. Is that what you're saying?
I think it would have to be mobile. So you'd bring it out, you'd set it up, you'd put it back. So it couldn't be of, I think, the similar quality would be my guess of something you could have housed in that press box. But I'm certainly not a AV expert.
And how often do we actually use the sound system for games?
Every game.
Every game. Okay.
And track meets,
track
it's really
meets.
important because of the timing of the events and the announcements that go out. It's pretty complicated without it.
Sarah.
I'm assuming this press box is pretty secure, too. I wouldn't want anybody to get into it and walk off with your equipment.
Me either. I would hope so.
The press box, what they generally use is almost like a mobile home construction. and then they crane it up and set it on a platform. So it's an exterior door that you would have in a typical home with a frame and a lock set, and it can be keyed into our security system, our key system for the school system. So with the press box, oh geez, I got to grab the dimensions.
I have the spec here. What did it say in here?
I don't want to say the wrong numbers tonight. Too many numbers in my head.
And while you look that up, is there anyone here who can say whether we already own the equipment that would go into the sound in the press box?
The project didn't fund yet a sound system for the facility. Currently, there's a portable system that is used. That's a future enhancement, but that was not currently funded in the project.
So we would have the box, but we wouldn't have the equipment that we need to house in the box.
Not yet. 8 by 18 is what I found for the press box. Does that sound right?
But we have equipment at Pownell Road Field that we use, I assume. I mean, because they do the announcements there.
But Michelle, did you just say, Michelle, that this equipment that we own already is something that we move back and forth from one
Right,
field
it
to
is
another,
mobile.
so we
I don't
don't
think
really
it's housed in
need a
anything
box
there.
at the high school for the equipment that we currently own?
Right. Right. I would say I think you could use it in there. It's probably not ideal, but it would work until we were able to do what we wanted to do with that facility. And I don't recall how much that was.
The sound system pricing could be crazy. It could be reserved. I think we had 60,000 in some of the initial budgets. It could be less. You could go crazier with it. And that was also before we really had been through a lot of the planning board things. And that was more just a kind of a stock system. I think in the end, with the requirements and conditions, we might have to do more speakers aimed in better ways to kind of meet all the planning board if we were to put in a permanent sound system at the site.
Fred looks like he has something he wants to say.
Has everybody been up to see the facility?
Yes.
It is nothing short of spectacular, in my view. And the question that I would have and I had this morning for the school board members and the administrators was, in 10 years, are 552 seats going to be enough? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's the key question. To do bleachers on the cheap, which would mean maybe not doing the press box or not doing the bleachers, I think doesn't really do justice to this project that we have, because it is so good and there is so little money that has to be put in from the inside, namely the school board, that I think you really got to think hard about doing the whole thing, and even consider adding the extra seats if you feel you need them in the future, because you're not going to add seats later. It's just not going to happen. The configuration is such that it doesn't lend itself toward adding on. And as we all know, once the project goes by the board, it's done. People don't want to revisit it. And I'd hate to have John's memorial service up there with only 552. He's got at least 600 friends.
Which John are you referring to? Jeremy.
Just on the number, the 532, if you attend high school sporting events at other towns too, I have a hard time believing that 532 is going to be a number that's going to be exceeded ever. I mean, and even if it is at the field, and John, you're sorry, the configuration of the field right now, it's incredible. I mean, it's just an amazing facility there. I still have a hard time believing we're going to go over 532. And on days that we might, there is that really great fence around it, and just the thought of having the fans being a few fans deep in that, it would just be an awesome environment. So I'm very surprised if we ever needed over 500.
Jen?
The only thing I wanted to add about the number is, if we wanted to do something with the high school, we are beyond 532 right now. We're at 535 and going to grow next year. So if we were to do, say, an outdoor pep rally in the fall, those bleachers would not hold our current student body, unless we hope for some absences. But
well, when the
other than that-
cheerleaders and the football team like be on the field doing
that's
something.
True. That's true. That's true. They most likely would, but
Mascot.
that's something to consider. That next year our proposed number is about close to 580.
Kate.
Plus staff.
Plus staff.
So I was kind of thinking after Jeremy's comments that, I don't think the 532 or even the extension we're considering is enough. So I kind of feel like both options are the cheap option. And so it would be wiser to hold off and wait until we can do the bleachers the way we want to do them instead of rushing it and trying to squeeze it in. I think we want more capacity in the bleachers than both options presented provide. So
I think the maximum, so there's apparently, not my expertise here, clearly, you can make them steeper, right? So that they go higher and you fit more people in that way, because we only have a certain width of space that we've built for the bleachers. So the steepest set of bleachers could hold how many? 700? I mean, the other option is to start putting bleachers on the other side. So some of the schools you look at, they'll have away bleachers on the other side. And we do have the portable bleachers that are currently at Pownell Road Fields, which could easily be used as those overflow bleachers for the visiting team for a big game if we had it. Sorry. It's not ideal from how far they are from the field perspective, but it is an option.
So the system, and the committee's gone around and around on this. The system that
This is very similar to the conversation we all had this morning.
Yeah, and we've had this fall, and we had earlier. So there are two types of systems of bleachers. So one of them is there's a frame system underneath it with a whole bunch of smaller structural pieces that's like almost like ladders underneath each section. So that's the system we currently have, which is of a certain value. If you want to really bump up the capacity, if we wanted to maximize the number of people we could have in the stands, we would go with a beam type bleacher, which is actually, when we conceived the project a couple of years ago, that was what was conceived there. And so it's a beam that allows you to get a lot steeper angle. It's a lot more robust structure, and is open, clear space underneath. With that, the cost per seat goes up. And, we honestly, at the end of the project, we're trying to back into something that makes it a complete project by the system we chose. That's what we did as a committee, and what we did with the design team was, all right, here's what John and Fred think they can raise. Here's where we expect our contingency is going to be. We've been trying to predict this since June or July. We started having this process, and we tried to back into a system and a seat count that was going to jive and be something that there was money here for at the end of the job, versus any incremental new capital requests through the community. We've heard over and over from Fred and John that they have gone to the well enough, and they're not, this is it. I know the community's had some sensitivity to how much is enough with the capital at the high school. So that's how we backed into it, right or wrong. But that was a thinking of, can we get a complete project? We're still not providing a lot of things that we had hoped to provide when this all started, as far as sound systems and other amenities and sheds and storage for things. I mean, concession stand. We just have a slab where a concession, not even a slab, but really a spot designated where the concession stand could go. So there's just one more piece that gets to a completed project, and there's still more work to do there, for sure.
So there were some other parts of the project, the sign comes to mind, that had to be changed because the proposed design was too expensive, but yet now we're coming over to contingency and pulling from that for bleachers. So
what do you mean the sign?
The arch. Didn't you have to change the design because the materials were too expensive?
They did adjust that. I do. I'll look at
I thought that was
John.
donated.
Well, I think
The arch
it was, but I
donated.
think the arch was adjusted at some point, right, John?
Well, it's that, yeah,
Right.
it's not anywhere close to what we voted on.
So, I mean, that was the whole balance is how much do we spend on the arch versus how much do we reserve for the other items that we want to accomplish at the project, right? And that was, I think we ended up with a great-looking arch with not making as much of an investment as we initially had been requested or some of the initial designs. And it was just a balancing of cost. We also, at the time we were approving the arch, we weren't as far into the project. We were still wrestling with a lot of other issues. We were still wrestling with cost with the contractor, with the retaining wall and the timing of that, and unsuitable materials. And, you know, it was at a different time in the job where I wasn't ready to release more retainage. I'm been kind of conservative on that, right?
And I think it was back in November that, I think.
Initially, the cost that came in on the archway was $50,000. And what we ended up paying out of pocket for it was 10, because people in the community donated the materials and the labor to put it up. So it was well within the area of being reasonable to include in the projects, and that's why we did.
And I do think, Kate, on that, the committee just grappled with, the, you know, how much do you want to pay for an arch, right? And so I think we adjusted the design a little bit. But I think it was back in November that we started talking about, with the remaining items, the two priorities were the dugouts, which Dennis is going to be doing through the maintenance department, and then the bleachers. And so we've just been waiting to see where all of the money kind of ended up before we went out to bid on the bleachers.
Yeah, I do remember that conversation of prioritizing things. I just don't remember ever being informed that we were going out to bid on the
Okay.
bleachers. And I guess since that is something that is posted publicly, as a board member, I'd like to know
Sure,
when
sure.
something like that is going out. So if someone asks me about it, I know what's going on. But luckily
Fair
nobody
enough.
did.
Yeah,
'Cause
fair
I
enough.
didn't know what was going on. I also thought that, and I think I keep confusing this, I thought that the bleachers I thought we got some bid alternatives for bleachers in the original round that were much higher than the amounts that just came in. So maybe as a comparison.
We did, and that was the 700-seat beam option with the clear space underneath and all of that. Those were much higher numbers. I can probably grab them on my laptop.
Yeah,
if you
it was
wanna hear 'em,
upwards
but-
of 300,000.
Oh, yes. And that was the more expensive, the steeper system and more seats and the full press box and all of that. So I think the press box might even been bigger than what we're currently carrying. So yeah, I can get those numbers if you want them.
In our committee, we kind of looked at what, I know Pat Carroll, we kind of gave them a number, like, you know, it's got to be around 200,000, and what do we think we can get for that price? And that's where we reduced it to the 500 seats.
Yep.
But I do think that it would be a shame to wait, because I just think there's a lot of momentum, and we have the funds currently to do it, and we had prioritized the bleachers as being the next thing on the list.
And I would be concerned about the collection of the remaining pledges if it wasn't an immediate plan. Like if we were going to say, someday we're going to put in bleachers, keep sending in your money. I would be worried about the collectability of those. I mean, maybe not, but I would be concerned.
Yeah, is there an issue with the money just lapsing into some other account? If we just let it sit there, doesn't have to move over?
Well, there's two buckets. They have the cash they already have, which they could certainly hold on to. They've already collected that. But then there's pledges of another 68.
No, I mean the contingency that we currently
Oh, our
hold.
contingency.
Yeah, that would have to be moved at some point, right? And when would that be? So I'm in favor of moving forward now too. That's what I'm saying.
So right now, it has been voted on to use it for the track
Can you
and
speak up because of the rain? I'm
sorry. Okay. Is this better? Yes. So this was voted on, and even in the annual budget meeting, to use these funds for track and field. So I think we would have to vote again to move the money to something else. Does that make sense? Okay.
No, we moved it from the reserve. Well, we moved it from the, I don't know where we moved it from. That was a year ago.
We moved it from the undesignated fund balance to the capital reserve account to be specifically used on track and field.
Right, okay, so it is in the reserve, yeah. But we couldn't use it on something other than track and field at this point, unless we voted
Unless we
again.
vote on it, vote to change it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we're wrapping up the high school facilities, building project, whatever we call that. There's some money left over from that.
Yep.
There's also the softball field still being worked on. So how is that all, you've already accounted for that?
The softball field has been accounted for in the track and field. So that's already been taken care of in that contingency that's left over. And the money that's left over for the building renovation project is going into the building. Right now, we're prioritizing the list of things that had to come off when we were doing the original bids, and we're putting some of those things back in. But it was all part of the original renovation project. So it's still going back in the building.
And so to use that on the track and field, that would take
require a
another vote.
Yep.
And that was a referendum vote.
That was a referendum vote
To move
that
it from
600.
the high school project to the track and field project.
That was a referendum vote.
That's a lot to read.
I know it is.
If you want me to read something.
Can I just emphasize something that Michelle said? You know, the collection efforts that have,
Don't blow into it, speak into it.
the collection efforts that have gone on since the first of the year have really been, in some ways, significant, in some ways difficult. The significant part is that we've gotten more donations from people who are anticipating that these bleachers are going to be done now. And the difficult part is we need to be able to go back to them, the people that are outstanding, and saying, look, we're going to build these bleachers in July and we need your money. And if we decide to not do that now, I think that that will jeopardize not the overall collectability, but the timing of the collectability for the bleachers, because they are expecting something to happen to complete the project.
So I mean, I'm just going to move this conversation forward to see if we can vote on it. But where I stand, I feel like we do need to move forward, and I am in favor of the bleachers. I am in favor of the box, but I have a concern that we'll have this box and it will sit there empty for how long? So what is the plan for actually buy equipment to make use of that box? I don't want the box to be paid for now and then we don't ever fund this system that needs to be housed in that box, and then the whole box deteriorates, and by the time we get the equipment we need a new box. Or I don't know, I mean, has anyone thought about the sound equipment and how soon we can
It's
consider
not
that?
just for sound. I think what you're going to find is, and I wish Craig was here, but that is going to be used first event right away for videotaping the games. It's going to be used for officiating. It's going to be used for scoring. There are things, we do own things that could be done in that box now. We have a console for the scoreboard system with a wireless, so the scoring could be done out of the press box. The videotaping could be done out of the press box. Often teams will have, for some sports, especially football, they'll have assistant coaches that are up at a higher elevation that are providing, making observations and reporting to the head coach. I don't
Is that
know.
legal? Sounds
Yes.
like a rule
They
in
actually,
the NFL
I
you
mean,
can't do.
I honestly don't know the rules currently, but a football program I grew up in Maine, we actually had wired connection to two coaches up in the press box for both sides of the field, so they could actually have radio wired communication to the coach on the field. So I believe that's still Maine Principal Association process. So there are things that could be done with the press box. It's not going to be an empty box sitting up there.
And is this something that we could ask Dennis to work into his capital plan?
Sure. We can ask Dennis to do anything.
Whether he does it or not is.
So the question was whether Dennis can build the box? Was that your question?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
Could he put the equipment needs into his capital budget?
Right, we could definitely look at.
Or maybe that's Seth's budget, I don't know.
Right.
I'm sure Craig will represent himself in the next budget round.
Yeah, or Craig's budget, right.
Can do it next year since we moved up his stuff for next year in this year's budget. I'm just generally disappointed that we're at this point where we have to make decisions at the risk of, I don't know, breaking promises to donors that we never made. It feels kind of weird. So I don't like that. And I don't like the last minute decision making. The no heads up that this would be on tonight's agenda doesn't give any time to think about this. I know I understand we need to make a decision tonight, that we're up against the wall. It just seems like this has happened a lot throughout both the building project and the track and field project, where we're having to make split decisions, whether it's moving cash from undesignated fund to capital reserve rather than bonding the project, or this sort of thing where we need to make a decision because we need to let people know tomorrow about something. It's not really fair to board members to have to make decisions while we're sitting up here without the time to really think about and deliberate and come up with the thoughtful questions, be prepared to ask the questions we want to ask, research. So I'll get off my soapbox, I guess, but I just wanted to express that I'm just disappointed with the process. So.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you in the timing piece of it. I wasn't aware of the timing constraints until today, so if I had the ability to give a heads up, I certainly would have. And we don't have to vote tonight. The concern is if we don't, we could miss a timeline. And if we're okay with that, then we can choose to not vote tonight. If the majority of folks feel they don't have the information they need to make a informed decision, then we can put off the vote and collect that information. We just want folks to know that the potential impact of that could be that we don't have bleachers by August 31st. If the majority of us are okay with that outcome, which it could be that that's the best outcome, then we have that choice.
And could John speak to just the competitive nature out there, what you were talking about with us this morning at the committee level about the price of the product and
right. So, I mean, the market right now in construction is super tight, super competitive. There is a real lack of bodies to get construction done. If the board puts it off, we'll make the best of the situation. I mean, that's what we do. We'll rally the troops, and I have a long relationship with the installer. I'll apply personal pressure on them if I have to. But it is a tight market, and if we miss a season, then we could face some real escalation of cost. We're seeing 8% escalation per year, 4% per half a year. It's amazing how quick those numbers add up on something of this value. When trade war things start popping up in the press, all of a sudden I quickly get faxes and emails, faxes still from companies, which is crazy, but about, look out, we can't hold our material prices. And this is aluminum, which is a large part of this product. We'll do our best, but by contract, if we don't award by a certain time period, the bidders could come back and say, sure, we'll wait 2 weeks, but the price might change, honestly. And hopefully don't have to come back here when we try to execute the contract.
I think we opened the bids, was it yesterday, Michelle?
Yes.
And so I too apologize for not being able to give more notice for this. I would just ask if we're postponing it, what more information can we provide to help you with your decision making?
Hi, Michelle. I'm not necessarily for postponing it for all the reasons that John laid out. I am too. I'm beyond disappointed that we are just hearing about it today, and the fact that, as John, it sounds like you knew, or whomever is responsible for getting these out 4 months ago, that this was going to be a problem if we waited, and yet we waited. I have a real problem with that. I'm a fundraiser, and you never make promises to donors that you can't necessarily keep. So that's all I want to say.
I think, 4 months ago in January, we were negotiating with the contractor for, delays. They countered with a $100,000 change request. We did not know the outcome of that, and so it didn't feel prudent to be bidding $200,000 project when we very well could have zero contingency left. So actually less, right? Because if we paid theirs, we wouldn't have gotten anything from them in return either. So, in an ideal world, I agree. But in the, what happened in this relationship with the contractor and the project, we were where we were, and it wasn't appropriate to be bidding this in January. So
when would it have been appropriate?
So we
yesterday or a month ago?
So when we finalized the agreement with the contractor, I don't know, last month. So within a week of that, they sent out the bids. So there was certainly a lapse in letting the board know that that was going out, and we'll take ownership of that. But we really couldn't have done it much sooner than that. Lindsay?
I appreciate the concerns about having information up front, but I'm kind of looking at this from a different angle, and that's that I'm absolutely thrilled that we have this proposal before us, and it was unclear as the building project moved forward whether or not there would be any money for bleachers. And yeah, I wish I had known about this in a board packet 2 weeks ago, but I'm thrilled about this offering and that it's a realistic possibility, and I'm ready to move the project forward and vote tonight if the rest of the board wishes to. I'm a little bit uncertain about, maybe Michelle could direct me to which motion to read, because there are some, there's a lot of legal language surrounding what I think are the basic facts in these motions, but I'm in favor of the highest bleacher number amount that has been requested tonight. I don't want to be short bleachers, and I understand that it's not really a financial option at this point to get 700 bleachers, so I would like those bleachers, and I would like the press box, and I would like Michelle to help me figure out which motions those would be.
So Michelle worked with the attorney today to figure out what our legal votes would be if we so chose. The first motion is essentially the motion to accept the bid from Material Handling Sales. And then there would be a second motion for the piece around the press box and or additional seating. So the base motion for the base bid of the bleachers would go like this. I move that the board accept the bleacher bid submitted by Material Handling Sales, Inc. and award the base bleacher contract to Material Handling Sales, Inc. for a total base price of $128,339, excluding additional necessary concrete slab work as determined by Carroll Associates, provided that this acceptance and award be subject to approval by the superintendent in consultation with legal counsel of a contract for that equipment and related installation work, and further provided that the superintendent is able to negotiate a price for the additional concrete slab work not to exceed, how confident do we feel about the 15,000? Do we think 17.5 for the concrete? Not to exceed $17,500 or $15,000 if this board accepts the additional bleachers ad alternate. Would that be your motion?
I think so. Can I just paraphrase that to make sure that I'm comfortable with that motion? So that means
this is just the bleachers. Just the base bleachers.
So that means, but the concrete slab and all that stuff, is that related to
That's
the
related.
outstanding work that needs, or is this only about bleachers?
This is only about bleachers.
Okay.
So as we asked them to go back and see if they could add some additional capacity to the 532, they came across some an area in front of the bleachers that had previously not been marked for concrete that they feel is appropriate to add concrete. So the cost of that in their estimation would be, with a little bit of cushion, would be $17,500 for just the base project, or $15,000 if we added the capacity, because the added capacity cost of $30,000 included some additional concrete work. So it wouldn't be, you don't have to double count it.
And Michelle, the bid that you just referred to includes the press box, correct?
No, this does not. This is the
It's
bleachers.
just the bleachers,
That's
okay.
$128,000. Yes. So there, because that's the actual bid that we requested. We have to accept the bid, and then the secondary motion would be the ad alternates that we would want to include.
Okay, so I make the motion that you read.
And I think Valley
I'll
seconded
second.
it. Okay. So this is just the base bleachers. This is not the press box or the additional seating yet. This would, yes.
Did we research this company?
Yes.
The company that's bid on this?
Material handling.
Material Handling Sales, Inc.
Yes, they're a very reputable firm. I've done a lot of business with them through the years, and the manufacturer is one of the bleacher systems, one of the bigger manufacturers. We just we'll have 1,000 seats of theirs by fall. We have 700 seats at our facility now, and they have built systems for years. Material Handling Sales does a lot of installations. They actually were a subcontractor on the high school renovation project for a lot of accessories, toilet petitions and lockers and all kinds of accessories. So we have experience with them, and I have experience with them in my paid job.
So they just provide the bleachers. Who installs them?
They are the installer.
Oh, they
So
install as well.
Dant Clayton is the manufacturer of the bleachers.
Oh.
They're the system. And then Material Handling, Inc. is the installer.
Vendor and installer?
Yes.
The
we get it,
vendor
yeah.
and installer?
We have you're right. We have the contract with Material Handling Sales, and they are the installer.
Yeah, any other questions? Okay, so the base motion is for the motion on the floor is for the base project. All those in favor? Opposed? Got it, Cynthia? Right, Maddie recused. Okay, so based on what Lindsay said, that your desire was to make a motion to include the press box and the additional seating.
Correct.
Okay, so this would be the motion for that. I move that the board accept the ad alternate bid submitted by Material Handling Sales, Inc. for the additional bleachers and a press box, and award that ad alternate to Material Handling Sales, Inc., and that the additional bleachers and a press box ad alternate be included in the contract for bleacher equipment and related installation for a total contract price of $229,297, including bleachers, additional seating, and the press box, but excluding the additional necessary concrete slab work as determined by Carroll Associates and to be negotiated by the superintendent, provided that the acceptance and award be subject to approval by the superintendent in consultation with legal counsel of a contract that the equipment and for the equipment and related installation work.
I think that sounds good, but can you just clarify, does that obfuscate the first amount from the first motion? Or is that in addition to that?
No, so this would, so because it's the total contract price, including the bleachers.
Okay.
$229,297. And as a reminder, that how that compares once we add in what we expect that additional cost for the concrete to be of 15.
You said 17.15.
Oh, right, 17.5, sorry. I put in the number they had given us, but which didn't have any contingency in there. So that puts the total project at 254. Once we add in those spring expenses we also have to pay for, right? So bleachers, press box, concrete, 90 additional seats, spring expenses, 200 and we'll call it 256.
The concrete slabs.
What's spring?
The spring expenses. So we still have work for the clerk of the works for the remaining work to be done on the track. They're going to be reseeding. They're going to be, I mean, a lot of that stuff is covered in their contract, but there might, having Brooke on site for potentially 4 weeks to monitor the rest of the work and the softball field. And we just wanted to make sure there was enough to cover any expenses related to the project.
So this is not related to the bid at all?
The 10 isn't. No, this is. I'm just trying to give people total dollar amount. So like 229 is the bleachers, the press box, the additional seating. But I just want to remind folks that there's another potential, well, there is another 15 to 17,000 in concrete work above and beyond that is what we expect. And then the $10,000 for the other expenses that still have to be paid this spring for the completion of the track and field project. So 256,000, which is pretty close to what we have in the contingency and the Tri-Town track and field if they collected every dollar, right? But there's likely to be some gap there, in which case the district is paying that. Yes?
Just a quick question. The press box, what was the cost of that and who's installing that? And do we get an estimate?
Same people.
Same people?
It's $70,958.
Okay, thanks. I just hadn't heard a figure on that yet.
So Michelle, going back to the original numbers, you said that there are $120K that the Tri-Town group can provide, and then the 112 in contingency that we can access, so that's 232. So we're 24,000 short. Where are those 24,000 going to come from if the total price is 256?
Right. So that would be, so the third motion would allow us to access funds in the capital reserve for, so it's possible if they collected every dollar that they would have $250,000, right? They committed to 120 of it because there is sometimes a gap between pledges and cash. It could be that gap is as small as $5,000 or $6,000, which we could fund from the capital reserve, which would be motion 3 on this sheet here, or it could be 24. So that, you know, this is where the discussion about, do we want to invest now and get the additional 90 seats? Because if you look at it, that 90 seats is really, we're paying for that from the district potentially, right? Because if we don't, we should have enough to cover the bleachers and the press box. Yes.
And are we saying that the original amount that was voted on by the voters to bond did not include bleachers? Just trying to how
I don't think it did.
I don't think it included bleachers. It didn't.
Well, I think I'm not sure the question we included it for the town for the approval. I don't know if it was. I think it specifically said it was not included in the referendum question. Yeah.
That's my memory.
It wasn't.
I think it was not.
So there were two things that were voted on. Two bond questions.
Right. So the first bond question was for the track and field, and the second one was for the lights.
Lights, yep. So I just want people to understand that, you know, the approval of that motion for the 229 could put, you know, include us kicking in from our capital reserve $20,000 to $25,000. It could be as low as $5,000.
And spending more than what voters originally approved, but
we never went to the referendum. Well, we never did the bond anyway, right?
Yeah, I know, but I think that you have to have some level of responsibility to what voters approved in what you do spend. And just there should be a level of clarity that we are getting more than what we would have under the base project, and that's why we're going above what the original bond approval was for. We will, especially when we dip into capital reserve, we'll be spending more than what voters originally had in mind for the project.
Valerie.
So Lindsay, have you made that motion or not?
Oh, did I?
I'm asking.
Yeah, okay.
Are you making that motion or not?
I make the motion that Michelle read, which includes
press box and additional seats.
Press box and the additional 90 seats. Which it may mean that the district spends between $5,000 and $24,000 in the difference between what the Tri-Town track can provide and what the cost is.
Yep. Okay, second from Jen.
And I'll make an amendment to that motion to fund the bleachers at the 530-something number, not the additional bleachers, and the press box, and the concrete work, and the 10,000 for other things.
What was the change?
Without the additional seats.
The 254 to include all that stuff.
The 532 instead of the 622, or however it broke down.
Okay, so we have a separate amendment we could do if we wanted to do that one, but we can do it as an amendment if, so do we have a second to her amendment? So, Naomi, okay, so there's an amendment to the motion on the floor to essentially just fund the press box as the ad alternate, no additional seats. That's the difference, right? Okay. Well, the first one is already approved. We can't amend that. We've already voted on that. That was just the base bleachers, correct.
So this one is no additional seats and just the press box?
Yes, press box, no additional seats.
Isn't that what that is?
That's A.
Oh.
No, concrete is part of, was part of that base bid where it says that the superintendent is able to negotiate the price of the concrete slab. So that's taken care of.
The second motion mentioned less, like subtracting the concrete slab out?
I don't think
Did you say something about a concrete
But
slab?
excluding the additional cost, right, because of the 229. So that 229 doesn't include the additional costs. So those would be, so just like mirrors up above where 128, excluding the cost that she's going to negotiate. So that 129 doesn't include the additional cost. It's 129 plus the concrete, up to 17.5. And this one is 229 plus up to 17.5 for the concrete. Okay. Is she going for caffeinated over there? Okay, so we have an amendment on the floor. We have to vote on the amendment unless anybody has a question on what we're voting on. No? You good,
What's
Jeremy?
the dollar amount of the amendment?
So the amendment would be 199,297. So it's essentially the $30,000 for the additional seats.
Okay.
Yes.
Just want to reiterate the point that Jen made about the seating. If we vote for the amendment with just the 532, not all the students could fit in the bleachers.
So she swayed you, huh?
She swayed.
Okay. So the amendment is to reduce the dollar amount by $30,000, essentially, for the additional seats. All of those in favor? Keep your hands up.
Still confused.
Okay, sorry.
So this is only voting if you want the seats, the original number of seats with the press box and not the extra seats?
Correct. We're voting on the amendment.
We don't get to vote, okay.
If it fails, then we go back to the original motion on the floor. I'm sorry, I didn't talk through the process. Yes, so it's just the amendment. So if you want to vote on the original amendment, which you seconded, you would vote no to this question. Okay. Okay, so all of those in favor of the amendment? Got it? Opposed? Okay.
And abstain.
Yeah, so you got 10 votes? You don't?
Well, I can't see.
Yeah, this is a unusual.
So Lindsay and me voted no. Okay. Okay, so that amendment fails. We are back to the original motion on the floor from Lindsay and seconded by Jen, which has a dollar amount of $229,297, includes the press box and the 90 additional seats. Okay, any questions? We ready to vote on that? Yes, okay. All those in favor? Opposed? 3 opposed, 1 abstain. Okay, so that motion carries. So the third motion that the attorney provided to us essentially allows us to accept the money from the Tri-Town track to put towards the project, as well as access the capital reserve to fund, well, in the short term, it funds while they're collecting their pledges. On a permanent basis, it could fund that $24,000 overage, if it comes to that. Okay, so the motion reads, I move that the RSU be authorized to accept gifts from the Tri-Town Track and Field in the amount of up to $150,000. Don't freak out, Fred. We just upped it a little bit in case you got a few more donations. We didn't want to have to turn away anybody. Of up to $150,000 for the bleacher and press box equipment project, and that the superintendent be authorized to borrow up to, is that 51 still work? It does? Okay. Are you sure? 'Cause my math shows that it would be 73 potentially. With the, because of the, yeah. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read the motion again. I'm sorry. I move that the RSU be authorized to accept gifts from the Tri-Town Track and Field in the amount of up to $150,000 for the bleacher and press box equipment project, and that the superintendent be authorized to borrow up to $73,000 from the Capital Reserve Fund for the cost of the contract that the equipment and installation work until those gifts are received. Okay? Valley made the motion. And
I'll second the motion.
Lindsay seconded the motion. Any question on this piece of it? No? All of those in favor? I think everyone but Kate and Maddie. Opposed? One opposed, one abstain. 9 yes.
Everybody else is yes. So opposed again, Kate?
Just Kate. Maddie abstained. Okay. Thank you, Fred and John, for sharing all of your time and information with us this evening. And thank you to the board for being flexible and letting us bring this before you on such short notice. Again, I apologize for the lack of heads up on it, but we weren't necessarily aware, so I apologize. All right, new business. Okay. 10A, consideration, so we need a motion and consideration of action that pursuant to Section 14854 of Title 20A, the Finance Committee be authorized to transfer not more than 5% of the total appropriation for any cost center in the FY19 operating budget to another cost center or among other cost centers, provided that the total FY19 fiscal year operating budget shall not be increased by such transfers. So this is a vote we take every year that allows us to, if we have an overage in one account and an underage, that's not a word.
So it's not necessarily an account, it's an article. We have 11 articles that we have to vote on, and the state allows you to give permission to up to 5% can be transferred from one article to another. And this can be done only on the budget side. And what happens, we actually used this last year when we did the track and field. So when we had a savings in Article 6, which is regular instruction, and we were putting in the track and field, we were able to move money from regular instruction because we had that extra there over into the maintenance article. So it doesn't happen often, but this gives me the permission in order to do that if I have to.
Okay. So Valley's making that motion. Second. John, any other questions? All those in favor? Jesus. None opposed? Maddie's back voting with us again. Welcome back.
No.
Okay. All right. Consideration and approval to employ a literacy strategist at the Pownell Elementary School and the Durham Community School for the 2018-2019 school year.
So I'm happy to nominate Georgiana McAllister, better known as Gigi, for the literacy strategist position. She will be supporting teachers and students at Pownell and Durham. She's coming to us from Gorham and has a Master in Literacy from USM. Her principal said that Gigi is recognized for her amazing abilities to educate, motivate, and inspire the youth of today. She ignites a passion and love for reading like no other. We are excited to welcome Gigi to RSU 5.
So we need a motion. Naomi, second. Valley, any questions? All those in favor? None opposed. Thank you. Consideration and approval to employ a 5th grade teacher at the Durham Community School for the 2018-2019 school year.
So I recommend to you Maya Burns for the position of 5th grade teacher at Durham Community School. She's currently working at a high school in Colorado and is looking forward to a move to Maine. She has a master's degree from Hunter College. One of her references say that Maya is the teacher who made her students believe in school, who helped them overcome self-doubts, who went the extra mile to work with them after others had given up. We are excited to welcome Maya with her belief that every student can succeed.
Valley, second. Lindsay, all those in favor? None opposed? Okay. So, you good? Okay. Consideration and approval to employ a speech therapist at the Moore Street School for the 2018-2019 school year.
I'm happy to recommend to you Caitlin Hecox for the speech therapist position at Moore Street School. She has her master's in speech from Plattsburgh State University and is currently working in Colorado. We've been doing a lot of Skype interviews lately, and one of her references say that when Caitlin comes into her classroom, her warm smile, calm demeanor, and joyful nature makes the classroom a better place. She's an excellent speech service provider, and we're happy to be having Caitlin join us in RSU 5.
Okay, motion. Maddie, second. Jeremy. All those in favor?
Question.
Yeah, oh, question, yep.
Quick question. Do we usually get this few number of applicants for these types of positions?
Are you speaking about the speech one?
Yeah.
Yep, that's pretty common in special ed.
Okay.
Ready to go? All those in favor? None opposed? Thank you. Okay. Board comments. This is in advance. She renamed our agenda here, board comments, in advance of us reviewing that policy later this evening. That was where we thought we could add, she didn't put it as one of the A, B, or C yet, but she's just preparing us. That's likely to come. So subcommittees, finance.
Okay.
I'm going to remind folks to put their salmon sheets back in their purple folders, please.
Okay, the Finance Committee last met on April 11th. In attendance were myself, John, Michelle R., and Michelle L. from the board. Dr. Foley was there as well. Additional guests were the leaders from the 3 towns. This was a meeting to discuss the funding, the cost-sharing formula. And what we did was Michelle L. started off with just sharing with everyone what the current cost-sharing formula is. Kind of what Bill did when he came here to the board, his presentation. She went through that with the town leadership. She explained that the RSU currently receives revenue from 3 sources, one being state subsidy, one is the miscellaneous income from things like main care billing for providing services to students within the classroom, and the final is through taxation. Under the taxes bucket, there's 2 types of taxes. One is called the required local contribution, and this is what the state says each town must raise in taxes for education based on what the state gives each town for valuation, known as the state valuation. And the second is called additional local contribution, and this is the amount of tax to be raised to cover the difference that all of the other revenue sources do not cover for the expenditures of the school budget. And it's this additional local contribution that is the part of the revenue that is subject to the cost-sharing formula, which under the current, what do you call that? The RSU?
RPC agreement.
RPC agreement, thank you. Under the current RPC agreement, this is the formula that was agreed to by the towns during the formation of the RSU. It was based on what the essential programs and services funding was for each town at the time of the formation of the district, and it's how the EPS is how the state determines the state subsidy for each town. So we talked about the other cost-sharing formulas. Michelle shared the document from our attorney that was shared at our board meeting in December 2017, showing the alternate funding formulas that we could consider implementing here in RSU 5, as well as different combinations, different formulas that are used throughout the state. Michelle also shared the same formulas using the budget year we're in, next year's budget. Now that we have the most recent ED 279, and what we agree at this meeting, we didn't get into real in-depth conversation at this point. It was more introductory meeting, and we decided folks could go back, collect their questions, send them to Michelle. She's the collector of all questions. And we're going to meet again. We were initially going to meet again
back in April
this month, but nobody could make that meeting, so we rescheduled it to May 7th, 2018, and it'll be at 5:30 in the Freeport High School Library. Everybody's going to bring information that they've gathered on their own as well, and we'll go over that at that meeting. Next meeting, I think I already said this, is the May 7th, 2018 meeting at 5:30 at Freeport High School Library. We don't have another regular scheduled Finance Committee meeting until
2 days later, May 9th.
May 9th. Okay.
It's finance kind of week.
Yeah.
Valerie.
So I would like to make a request that Michelle share with the board the different scenarios with the updated numbers, with the most current ED 279. Thank you.
Maddie.
That, when you say everybody couldn't make that everybody at the next meeting is all the same people?
Yes. Yep. It will be another meeting with the town leadership.
Yeah.
We're also going to work on, I think, structuring future work plan as well at that meeting.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense if all towns feel as though this should be revised or not? Too early to say?
I think it was too early to say, because there was definitely a difference in, it was clear that some people had spent a lot more time with the data than others had at that point, just because it had been on other people's radar more, and really digging into the cost-sharing formula. So there was a request to allow some more time to digest and go through all the information, gather questions, and sort of make this a thoughtful process that everyone felt like they were educated enough to participate in. So I don't think that everyone necessarily felt in a position like they were informed enough to know.
Yeah, I think it was and that was intentional. Like, we didn't go, I think it was mentioned at the meeting, like, we didn't really want to get into this is how I think it should be done and this is how I think. So we tried to avoid that and just keep it high level at this point. As best we could. People tried to, but we tried to keep it more high level, introductory, give people information, exchange contacts. If people had things they wanted to know right off the bat about each town's financing structure, we kind of discussed some of that, and people promised to come up with their list of questions and also return to this meeting, this next meeting, with some of the information that was requested of them. Yeah.
Last one. Is this meeting a meeting that board members and or the public may attend?
So all of our all of our subcommittee meetings are public. They're published.
Right.
You are welcome to attend.
So this is not a special meeting.
No, I mean, it's special in that there's more than the four of us there, which is usually what's at a finance committee.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it is a finance subcommittee meeting, so it is open to the public. We don't have public comment at subcommittee meetings, but if somebody wanted to, listen, they certainly could. Yeah.
And I would like to encourage the Finance Committee, when you hold your next meeting, to seek feedback from individual members of town leadership, but try to dissuade them from engaging in some kind of debate that may give them the impression that they are making the decision. In terms of which way we go, we just want to get their opinion. Mm-hmm. We don't want them to make the decision for us or walk away from the meeting assuming that if they do engage in conversation and debate, they are making the meeting.
Yeah.
meaning the decision, not the meaning.
Yeah. Good point. Any other questions for Kate? Okay, strategic communications.
Okay. As you can see on your blue sheet, at our last meeting at the end of March 23rd, we spent the majority of the time with doing our last revisions to the brochure. And my understanding is you'll be getting that at the next board meeting. And Ginny has done a wonderful job, as usual. We also received the data from the satisfaction survey, and we had over 350 responses, and the data has been broken down by school and then district-wide. And certainly looking at it, there's some things that we're just doing wonderfully at in terms of people's responses, and a few things in terms of those responses, we want to look at. But also the executive summary and pulling together all that data to present it to the board is kind of underway, and the committee will look at that next time. Which we didn't get to, as you'll see, was talking about ways to celebrate teachers, and we'll be doing that at our next meeting, which is May, I don't have a calendar in front of me.
May 4th.
May 4th.
Week from tomorrow. No, week from Friday. No. Any questions for Candy? Okay. You're up again.
Okay. Policy Committee. And the first thing I want to say to you, Cynthia, I was actually at all of these meetings, not by phone. Okay. No, I was by phone at a meeting several months ago, and the form kind of just never got changed. You know, we all do that. We just leave it alone.
I was going to say, I don't even show up at the finance meeting, so I was going to say, I'm not even on the phone. I'm just not there. So you're doing better than me, Candy.
Okay. Well, you can see we've had 3 meetings attended by the committee members, me and Naomi, and that we've had several other board members come to a few of those meetings as we discussed some policies that everybody cared about. Anyway, if you look at your first one is March 23rd, and you're going to see some of these today as Cynthia presents them. We took suggestions about the class size, and you'll see in your packets there's a revised policy which we'll look at today. And excuse me, the dropout prevention one, which will be presented to you as well, really that was changed just to reflect what we're currently doing, that the policy, the way it was written, is not what we're doing now, so it was changed to reflect that. If you look at the April 6th one, we had the important class size discussion again, and we also had the simple changes in the agenda format, which we'll be looking at again today. And then at the April 13th one, we talked about the grading system for reporting student proficiency, and Cynthia will be presenting that to you too. So there were several on here, as you can see, that there were no changes from before, and some that had, you know, very minor changes, but you'll see as Cynthia presents these what we talked about.
Okay, Maddie.
When is the next meeting? Policy committee meeting?
It says the
I'm sorry?
27th. Friday.
Yeah, this Friday morning is the next meeting.
All right, so policy review.
So I believe we have the first reads first. So present in front of you in the gray packet, you'll see IKAB grading system. And the changes there are in paragraph 4
there's a cross out of those years, and it says, at the high school level, reports to parents will indicate the numeric grade on a 0 to 100 scale. And then, oh, it's so far away. Maybe if I hold it, because it's not okay. And so, to repeat, at the high school level, reports to parents will indicate the numeric grade on a 0 to 100 scale. And then it says for the class of 2025, which are the current 5th grade students, that and beyond, the proficiency levels from 1 to 4 will be used at the high school, based on the conversation that occurred at the last board meeting on April 11th. And then the next paragraph, it's crossed off that class of 2001 and beyond, and it is replaced by, for the pre-K to 8 reports to parents, that will indicate the proficiency level within the various content areas upon which the grades are based. And the only other change, it's actually highlighted yellow, is in the sort of like that chart far over to the right, the where it has proficiency 6 to 12, it has 6 to 8. To reflect the current practice. So it's it's for you to now discuss.
Questions?
Comments. I wasn't here at the last meeting, obviously, but I tried to watch it what I could. It wasn't the best meeting to watch, but I do have a couple of questions. I didn't get the impression that it was decided, and I certainly wouldn't support this timeline of 4 years for the 0 to 100 scale, and then revert to the 1 to 4.
Yeah, I would be interested to hear the thinking behind what drove that date.
So why is it going back to that? Because the feeling was that the board was still interested in having a timeline, and if the policy committee misinterpreted that, that it wasn't that we wanted to necessarily abandon it, that there needed to be more time to do it well and to, work toward better communication around it and phase that in a way that would work.
What I got away from the meeting, watching it, and what I truly believe, and if I had been here I would have said that, I'll say it now, is that some of the practices of PBE I find extremely helpful. But that the grading system is not one of the practices that I find helpful at the high school level. So even though I would support things like the relearn, retake, the habits of work separate from the content area, grades, the rubrics, the scoring criteria, all of that I'm fully in favor of, continuing doing it at the high school level as well as all the other levels. At the high school level, however, I am not in support of the 1 to 4 grading system. And one of the reasons why I don't feel that that is appropriate for our high school at this point is that there is very little buy-in from the teachers, and I don't think just saying in 4 years we go back is going to assuage any of the concerns that the teachers currently have at the high school or get the buy-in that we need for this implementation to be successful. So I think that if we do this, we're just basically telling the teachers we're not listening to you, we're just putting it off, and during the 4 years that are ahead of us, we're just going to try to convince you that this is the best way forward, and I don't think that will work.
Sarah.
Hi. I was here, and I don't recall that the decision or the recommendation was that it was just about reporting to parents. That it was, this was a way of communicating also to the students as well as college admissions folks. So am I wrong on that? Did we really leave it just that this was just for parents?
The reason we changed it was because of parent feedback?
But it was teacher feedback.
Right.
That really prompted the changes, not parent feedback?
I think we didn't go around and say, you know, what drove you to vote one way or the other. I think for me personally, the teacher feedback was extremely meaningful to me. I did not walk away from that meeting with the expectation of seeing a date when 1 to 4 would come back. I thought in my brain, how it would happen is, you know, if holistically we, you know, sort of progressed along the PBE timeline and included the practices that we felt were helpful and came to a point where either 1 to 4 became more readily accepted and understood, wow, it's getting late, understood, you know, from parents and teachers and college admissions and, you know, just having a little more clarity around that than going back in that direction might be in our future. I didn't envision it being, okay, this is the date it comes back. I mean, I guess I can almost grasp why you'd want a date so that things don't just sort of get pushed aside to never be considered again. But I guess I agree that I'm not in favor of having the date in there at this point. Kate?
So my interpretation was different based on the presentation from the administrators. I was under the impression that the 1 through 4 actually stays and that it gets converted through a crosswalk. And that's why I was expressing my views at the last meeting that we should just stay with the 1 through 4 because it's not the same 0 to 100 that we're used to seeing, because you're basically taking the 1 through 4 to do the assessment and then converting it onto a 0 to 100 scale. And so the 1 through 4 doesn't go away, except in the reporting piece. That was my impression.
I thought that the conversion came into play for the existing freshmen who we had to come up with a 1 to 100.
Well, it's a retroactive conversion.
Right. But going forward, like next year, I didn't.
No. It was a whole thing they had to develop.
We'll talk more. Here we go. So one of the things that I think that the board will see pretty quickly is that when we do this conversion at the end of the year. So I'll start with that by saying at the end of this year, at the end of quarter 4, starting June 25th, we will convert the 9th grader scores, final course score, from a 1 to 4 to a 0 to 100. And what you will all quickly see is that is not a mathematical calculation. Some people went to Florida for a vacation. I was working on conversion scales. And it's a made-up number, honestly. I just played with a pencil and an eraser until I came up with something that I think is kind of reasonable after looking at 10 different schools' conversion scales. And I'm going to share that with our 3 leadership teams as well as a representative from each department. And some are going to love it and think it's great, and some are going to hate it. They're going to think it's too high or they're going to think it's too low, because it's not a mathematical calculation to convert that score. It will work. We can make it work. But so moving forward, when, as you said, Vali, that you're in favor of the rubrics and the clear targets, and that has come out from students saying that's helpful. Teachers are saying that part we get, you can't, my friend Hank Ogilvy said yesterday in a meeting, you can't argue with clear targets for kids and clear descriptors of how they move from one level of performance to another, that it's crystal clear to them, and we're coaching them and give them feedback about how to get there. When you do that with a number range, 73 to 77 up at the top, or 93 to 100, then that becomes that kind of arbitrary factor that's in there that's supposed to be the clarity of that rubric with a more clear number. And I totally see that we can debate it both ways, and that rubrics have been used for a very, very long time. But in most instances, a rubric, I saw an example of an old one today where it was a range of 5 to 10 points if you did this. Well, if I'm a kid, I don't know how I'm going to get a 6 or how I'm going to get an 8. I'm just going to trust the teacher knows that, but it's not clear to me. And so it can be difficult to incorporate what is working and what teachers feel positive about and what students feel positive about, which is the descriptors and the rubrics, and the 0 to 100 conversion. And so I think when I unfortunately couldn't be at that meeting with the policy committee, but Charlie was there, and we will make it work, and we do understand that is more understandable for parents right now. But if we are hoping that we are continuing to foster what works with proficiency, then the essence of proficiency is reporting on a 1 to 4 scale and figuring out how to make that work in a way that you can communicate that well with students and with parents. Yesterday at the proficiency meeting, one of our veteran teachers who's on that committee said, well, I would hope we would be able to do that in 4 years. So that was his perspective, thinking that is a little, so this is my 3rd year. They've been working on this for 4 years. So that would be 8 years that we would be in development of how do you make 1 to 4 scoring work with high school students. I think we are going to see a lot of states moving in that direction, coming from Massachusetts, and over break having the chance to talk to 3 different principals that I have worked with in the past. Now they're looking to join the League of Innovative Schools, and they're looking toward how do they start to incorporate proficiency reporting, because they've already been doing proficiency grading, practices and scoring and common rubrics for many, many years when I was in Massachusetts. So I hope that clarifies a little bit our thinking about why there would be a date there, in hoping that we would be able to not just try to convince people, but to actually make a system that works.
A question. So, Jen, the thing that trumps me a little bit is that if we're just going to use the same system that we have now, with the rubrics written in 1 to 4, and we're going to convert once at the end of the year, we're not really addressing the concerns. We're hearing a lot of concerns about problems that are attached with the grading system, with the 1 to 4. I understand your point of view, and I respect it. I differ, quite frankly. I have a son, as you know, in 10th grade, and in his grade, they use the rubrics as guidelines. They don't even attach numbers to them. Mm-hmm. And it works like a charm. It's great. My son understands exactly what he needs to do to achieve the best possible outcome. He doesn't need to know whether it's a 1 or a 3 or a 4. And that's the kind of PB practice that I support. As far as just doing this gimmicky thing that at the end of the year we just translate the 1 to 4 grades into 0 to 100, that doesn't really address any of the concerns or the issues that have arisen in the last year. So I think we need to look at something that goes a little more in depth than just using a conversion scale once at the end of the year.
I think that's only for the freshmen. I don't think the expectation is everyone would then get graded 1 to 4 next year, and at the end of the year we would convert again.
So how would it work next year?
So we spent a lot of time at the last board meeting just talking about that. We've investigated other schools, and the way that every school is doing a hybrid system is different in every school. So Greeley's using a hybrid system, Falmouth's using a hybrid system, but many of the other schools, and they're doing it quite differently. So the conversion at the end of this year is just for this year's freshmen. And then what I shared with the board is that we need to find a hybrid system that works for us. And I can't say what that will be right now because every single school is different. I can give you a specific example that maybe I didn't say last time, that a major challenge for teachers is the amount of scores that they need to enter into PowerSchool. Not always that they don't believe in the scores that they're entering. Those are two different issues. It's time consuming what they're doing. So one of the things we're going to grapple with is there a way to reduce the number of actual numbers that they're entering to track proficiency? I certainly think that's, none of us want teachers' work to be unmanageable. And I think that's something that we can look at what's a better system for doing that. But you're still giving kids really targeted feedback on where they stand in a particular skill. We just have to figure out how to do that.
Can I ask a process clarification? I have a lot of changes to, or recommended changes to this policy that I'd like to put forth, and I'm a little bit unclear, like, are we making motions for each individual change, or are we just having sort of a discussion about how we feel about this, and Cynthia and the committee are going to go back and kind of wrangle with everything they heard tonight? How formal do we want to have tonight be in terms of making motions
So
for
it's
changes?
It's a first read of a policy. I think historically how we've done it is provided some guidance sort of by consensus for the board. I mean, individuals may have their own specific opinions, but if the consensus of the board is we want the date or we don't want the date, generally the policy committee goes back and adjusts or tries to make recommendations to speak to those concerns. I'm not sure we need to look at individual motions by line.
I would request in this situation that we do. I feel like there are a lot of different viewpoints at the board tonight about a high quantity of issues in this policy. And I think if I were Cynthia and the committee, I would find it virtually impossible to represent the wishes of the board unless there are board votes on each point, this being one of them. I mean, I think we could go round and round tonight and talk about this for 3 hours, this very point, and I have another 10 to go over. So I guess I'm requesting that we get a little bit formal with this for the sake of being able, for the committee's ability to determine board majority on each topic of conversation.
I mean, or we could do straw votes. I mean, it doesn't have to be an official motion and I don't know.
Right.
Well, what's the difference between a straw vote and a motion? The only difference is that a motion has specific language, and I frankly feel like the specific language tonight is of utmost importance. And I mean, straw votes just make things complicated, because if you're just like, oh, if the language isn't specific, I don't think we're helping the policy committee with the board's general feeling.
So for tonight, I think we were looking for the discussion around the date, whether you want the date or not. I think that that's one of the reasons the board has subcommittees, so that you don't get into wordsmithing or doing, like a whole revision of a policy. I would recommend that if you're not ready to take even a vote on the first read, that would be fine, and just give some direction. And that if you have 10 other suggestions, then that might be something where, Lindsay, you might want to go to the policy committee, and then we could bring that back. But the big direction that we were looking at from our last workshop was that that we recommended that we would go back to 0 to 100 and revise the policy to reflect such. We weren't aware that there were a lot of other issues with the policy, because you passed it a year ago with not a lot of discussion. Now, I understand that things could have changed from then, but I really think it's the subcommittee's job to really grapple with those kind of issues. If you want to throw out topics, like I also see some issues around this, and this, then, I think the policy committee can go back and grapple with those. But I wouldn't suggest going line by line through the policy and making revisions tonight.
Yeah, we don't have really time, I don't think,
Right.
to do that tonight.
So
I
Friday
guess, I mean, I would, yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, I would really like the board to be able to discuss some of these things, so maybe I'll just go at it just topically with some of the things that I would hope to see and in here, based on the voluminous parental commentary and the workshop and all those things. I think there's a lot of room for significant improvement towards fixing certain pointed problems. So I guess, should I just dive in?
Sure.
I have to try to organize my thoughts here. Okay, so one of them was the concept that we heard from a lot of parents was about a feeling that we're lowering the bar for a lot of students. And a lot of the language in here is, I think, responsible for that. The focus on proficiency instead of the whole range of performance is an example. So I would advocate for the 1, 2, 3, 4 descriptors of proficiency to be common from pre-K to 8th grade. I don't really see a dramatic or meaningful need to have different terminology floating through the system. And I would suggest that those terms reflect a course of progress through excellence or some word that indicates that there is a goal at the 4 level that isn't exceeding anything. It is the actual goal for some students. So I would recommend, what do I have in here? I kind of took some from the other level. I got to find it in all my notes. Sorry, hold on. I would recommend district-wide pre-K through 8, 1 being beginning, 2 developing, 3 proficient, and 4 being excellent. I would also be happy with words like masterful or distinguished, if they wanted to toss some of those words around. Another example of, and so if I wasn't clear, the words exceeds the standard or extending, which are currently in the policy, to me indicate sort of that the bar is proficiency that we're asking students to meet, and then you can kind of go over it if you want, which is not the message that I'm sending my children. I want my children to perform toward excellence in their journey, and wherever they end up, you know, but the goal is not proficiency. The goal is the best you can do along a continuum. Another example of language that attempts to diminish this like lowering the bar effect that seems to be happening. Where was that? So for example, well, we could get rid of, in the title, it could just be called grading system and reporting. Because we're not just talking about proficiency, we're talking about the whole continuum. Another example of an area where we could fix that would be the third paragraph from the bottom, the third to last paragraph. For the class of 2021 beyond, all levels of habits of work will be reported separately from academic. I would change proficiency to performance. Because again, we're asking for more than proficiency for so many of our students. There are other places in here that is true, but maybe I could email them to the policy committee instead of going through one by one. I think you guys got my drift. If anyone else wants to talk for a little bit, I can maybe get my thoughts together on another topic.
I just want to respond to one thing. The intent from the administration and the teachers and the staff is not to lower the bar, and I also just want to point to one of the data points that we gave at that workshop, showing at the levels that we have been implementing proficiency most rigorously are the levels that we are, in fact, not lowering the bar, but raising the bar for our students. But I am good with always putting in language that includes rigor and trying to raise the bar for all. So I'm not opposed to that. I just want to point to the data that we currently have around it.
Maddie.
Lindsay, I appreciate the desire to acknowledge the concerns that we hear from parents. And I know that many will disagree, but I believe that this is a perception that standards-based education lowers the bar. And I think if we simply play with the language to address those concerns, we are undermining what a quality standards-based education is all about. I'm no expert on this, but I've been spending a lot of time reading many perspectives on this, discussing with teachers. I just joined the committee, so I spent some time with Jen and the other principals and some of the teachers yesterday, and to address Valley's concerns earlier. The reason why I made the motion that I did at the last meeting, and I did so a little heartsick, because I agreed with Kate that I would like to see a pure standards education policy and grading at our schools. I think that that is the way to go. And I think it's the best for all of our students. But clearly our teachers at the high school level have had a challenge with the implementation. And I think we need time to do that right. And it's going to be incredibly complex, but I have faith that Charlie and Jen and their team can get it right with the full cooperation of the teachers. I am in favor of the timeline. We spent some time talking about it yesterday at that advisory committee meeting. The point was made that perhaps, it might even be too long, but that Jen and her team would know, if they were ready sooner, and if the students were ready sooner. We clearly have a lot of work to do with our parents, so that I don't want to say they understand, but so that we're all on board, so that we. Yeah, I don't know how to better say that. I'm sure I'll take some flack for that, but I don't want to make the language make it sound like we're creating some hybrid system in our schools. I would like this policy to reflect that we're taking some time to get it right in our schools, and that we will revisit it and go to the pure system that I would advocate for when we're ready. And I'll also say that it was, to me, very beautifully demonstrated at that workshop that it's going really well in our middle schools and our elementary schools. We just have some work to do at the high school level. So I'm a little heartsick that my 8th grader isn't going to get a proficiency-based diploma, because it's working incredibly well for her. And I'm a little bummed that she's going to have to go.
Well, she has to, by the state law, state of Maine. I mean, we're not saying we're not offering proficiency-based diplomas, are we?
No,
no. Yeah, I mean.
No, she will get a proficiency-based diploma using the 0 to 100.
Because she understands how she's being scored now, and it works well for her. And I'm a little concerned about how that's going to work, but she'll roll with it. She's a kid. She's resilient.
So, Maddie, I guess I'm a little bit unclear. Were you responding to my language changes? Like,
and I kept talking.
Oh, well, I don't understand why changing exceeds the standards or meets the standards to, say, proficient and excellent does anything to harm a proficiency-based system. I guess what I'm trying to do is work within proficiency-based beliefs, because I, like Valley, I mean, there's a lot that I absolutely believe in. I just feel like it's chopping high-achieving students off at the knees to say that the goal is proficiency. I mean, I feel like we're like saying differentiation on one side of our mouth and then saying everybody's got to be proficient, and that's supposed to mean the same thing for different kids. I'm saying each kid's academic goals are varied and unique as they are, with the only exception being that there's a minimum standard of proficiency required for everyone to graduate high school. So I guess, to me, proficiency-based education is a general term. It's like a basket that holds a lot of different components, and each one of those components has merit and has the ability to be refined within each school district, and how we grade or what we call things. Those are all, we all have the ability to change those to meet the needs of all the students. So I guess I'm not understanding exactly what you're saying. Are you saying that you want proficiency in the title of this policy because you want the spirit of you don't want to lose the spirit of proficiency-based education?
No.
Or what? Like, yeah, what?
No, I don't object to that at all. I should have been more clear. It's in the proposed, and I don't remember exactly what you said, but the different levels, the changes to the wording, the way that some of the words you suggested made me believe that it sounded more like an ABCD kind of a system. And
no, all I'm suggesting is, so you see the table on the policy. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, and we have words associated with them for what those numbers mean. Currently, we have pre-K through 5 being one set of words, and 6 through 8 being another set of words, and there aren't even a set of words for the high school. So what I'm saying is, why do we need different sets of words? Why can't they be?
And I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
I think it was just some of the language that you were suggesting that made it sound to me as though the 3 was a B student.
The 3 would be
and
proficient.
And the 4 would be an A student.
The 3 would be proficient, and the 4 would be another goal beyond proficiency that doesn't refer to proficient. It's approaching excellence, distinguished, masterful, something that isn't, the reference point isn't proficiency, it's something beyond proficiency.
You were just saying the word proficient, you don't want to use that word in the descriptor.
I don't want to I don't want the 4 to refer to being over the 3. I want 4 to be its own academic goal that is legitimate in its own right for the depth and quality that it represents.
I'm wondering if I can just add one thing, Lindsay, to a point you made is I just want to make sure that I'm saying again that I would hope that 9th graders would say that they have never heard me say that 3 is the goal, that I have said 3 or higher over and over and over again. And I guess I just want to make sure that that's really clear, that we have not sent a message to our 9th graders that the goal is to get a 3. It's the same as when we were at an ABC. I would say to kids, B or higher. That's what you're shooting for.
Yeah,
we're not shooting for Ds.
Thank you for that. Where I got that was from a ton of parent feedback, a lot of the public comments in the surveys. I mean, this lowering the bar this feeling that the bar is being lowered is a huge public sentiment right now. And I feel that it's inherent in the language we've been assigning to things, that proficiency seems to be the sun in the center of the universe and everything else orbits around it. I'm just saying, let's have a scale that doesn't have everything referred to proficiency. Proficient is a point in it for some kids to focus on as the end goal, and for other kids, it's kind of where they start, wherever they're at, but it doesn't keep referring back to it.
Jen.
Becky, you might, I'm thinking back to when this all started back, the whole, like in 97, I think, with the main standards. Distinguished keeps coming back to me as it was something, and then there were 4 levels, and distinguished was the top, and I don't know if I'm confusing that with like scoring MEAs or something, but there were 4 levels, and they were named with distinguished being the top of the 4. So I know back somewhere there are.
I think there was at some point, and then some people went to exceeding the standard. I think the state went through its own different things. So I have no problem with changing it, and I agree that it really should be the same language. Pre-K to 8 or even pre-K to 12, and that was one of the things that we had talked about at some point, I think at the PBE meeting, that we would like to work towards that, because then kids know it. What's magical about changing the word when they get to 6th grade or 9th grade. So it would be good to, I think, come up with common language.
And I can say that that's, in looking at other schools, we'll find 100 different iterations of what they call the 1, 2, 3, 4. Advanced is probably the one I see the most. Distinguished is usually associated with MEA, but proficient for a 3, advanced for a 4.
I mean, even in our own district, I mean, when we were working on the superintendent's evaluation, we're like, well, we should make this consistent. And they're like, well, consistent with the administrators or consistent with the teachers or consistent, everybody's 1 to 4, but the words are different, right? Like, so, I think we've been working towards this common language even before we got here tonight. And I don't disagree that, trying to be consistent is a good idea. Okay.
So can I take a little time to ask Jen for more information about what the grading system would be like for, say, 10th graders next year? Because you said, well, I can't tell you now. It could be a kind of a hybrid, and it may seem tangential and not really directly related to the policy, but it is. I need to understand what is on your mind in terms of...
So I presented last time that we met saying, I would not feel comfortable saying that right now without talking that through with teachers, which we haven't had time to do.
So you haven't
since
had that.
Because the board presentation was Wednesday, then we had Thursday, no school Friday, and then came back for these 3 days. And so my leadership team doesn't meet until next week. So right now we've been communicating with teachers that this is what we're going to be looking at and working on. And we've been clear, and teachers have been clear that they'd like to know before the summer, what we're looking at. But right now we have not done that. What I shared, and I'll say again, is that when we were investigating other systems in other schools, we were not investigating hybrid systems. We were looking at true proficiency systems. And so now we've started to research what people are doing as a hybrid, and some people who are doing a hybrid are getting ready to get rid of the hybrid and go to a 1 to 4. So it's going to be complex, and we need time to do it.
Yeah, and the reason why I ask is because I share your concern about the hybrid system. I mean, those things do not work. I've read so much, and they had it at the middle school, and it did not work, and that's why they decided to just do the one system. So I would strongly express my concern about hybrid systems and the amount of work that is included for the teachers and the confusion that it creates for the students. So hoping that we don't see any hybrid system, because I don't think that would work, but also I'm hoping that whatever is done is to address the concerns of the teachers, that the 1 to 4 is already a lot of work, already too much work, that is taking their attention away from the kids, and it's taking their attention to documenting and gathering evidence for lots of scoring criteria, for lots of rubrics, for lots of classes. So I'm glad to hear that you say, okay, we're going to let the teachers decide and just simplify and make it just easier to administer. That's what I would like to see. And as far as how we go with the language in this how do we call these things?
Policy.
It's so late in
Policy.
this policy. Yeah, I mean, if we can just make it so that we give teachers a voice in the policy itself, in terms of just how we simplify this thing and make it easier to implement. That's the only thing that will get buy-in, because what I hear is, we don't buy this thing because it's so much work and it doesn't allow me to teach the way I used to teach or want to teach, meaning spending more time with the students.
I guess I don't see how this is not a hybrid system. I mean, if we say we have the aspects of proficiency-based or standards that we like, but we want 1 to 100, doesn't that, by nature of saying those two things, put us in a hybrid system?
Yeah, no, but what I meant by hybrid, sorry, I need to clarify, is not to have parallel systems. Have
right,
the
dual
1
grading.
to 4,
Yes.
two
Yes.
parallel
Yeah,
grading
yeah.
systems. We don't want hybrid grading systems.
Yeah, I would agree that we probably, I mean, dual grading sounds like we're adding more work to their grading, not less. So I think that would be a tough sell.
Right.
Okay, so I'm looking at this policy, and we say that at the high school level, reports to parents will indicate the numeric grade on a 0 to 100 scale, and I feel like that's misleading. I think it should have the same language as the following sentence that says proficiency levels 1 through 4. I think it should be proficiency levels 0 to 100. And I'd just like to add, if we think that assessing students on a 1 to 4 scale is too much work now, wait till they're doing 0 to 100. It's many more range of numbers for teachers to have to assess on and enter into the grading system. And to me, just going forward, it's a lot of heavy lifting to then come back to where we are now in 2025, to get through from now until 2025. It's going to be more work for teachers.
Okay.
I think whatever we do, we're constantly keeping in mind how to keep it manageable for teachers, and I think that what we're trying to look at right now is, as we would do with anything, is look at the big picture. What's our long-term goal? What are our short-term goals? And what's something that's going to work for teachers and for students and parents?
Lindsay.
I understand that you guys are figuring this all out, and this isn't determined yet, but I feel really the board has to have a policy in place for how the high school determines proficiency, because it's a requirement for a state-based diploma.
Mm-hmm.
So this policy currently does not have that definition in it, as far as I read.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hearing murmurs, but
yeah.
maybe I've missed it,
No,
but I didn't see it in there, and I read it very carefully.
The only murmur I think I murmured is I do not think this is a required policy. I think I had Cynthia check on that and communicated that to the board at some point.
But I mean,
via
we have
email.
to be able to communicate to our 9th grade students
No,
what they have to do to earn a diploma. I mean,
Right.
come on.
I mean, we used to say you needed X credits to
Yeah,
graduate.
I
So
mean,
now what do we say now?
What do you say to the 9th graders? And so,
Exactly.
I mean, I understand that it's being worked out, but it needs to be worked out before school starts and written down so that the whole district, it's communicated, the board members understand, board members can appoint parents that way.
It could be that it's in the handbook, because that's where like the credits and stuff, like that's where the current diploma requirements are.
IKF policy, that talks about graduation requirements, and
Okay,
I'm
so
sure you
maybe
have it in the book.
But we have
Yeah, so
to
this
define
is-
proficiency. I mean, that's a state law. So I would say that if this is a grading system and reporting policy, it should stay in the policy what is proficient in high school. And I recognize you're going to work it out. I have a suggestion that I'll just throw on the table. A lot of you might not like it, but I'm just going to throw it out there for the sake of, working with it. You can throw it out, you can amend it, whatever you want in the policy. But for the time being, RSU 5 defines proficient performance on content standards as scoring 75% or greater on evaluation of performance unless a teacher specifies in advance otherwise. Something that is saying we're going to do something, but the teacher or change that to the admin, that there will be flexibility for the school to change that to do what works, but that it will be shared with students in advance.
I guess my understanding, what I have learned from this process, is that a policy is bigger than that, and that the details are what go, and our program of studies is 85 pages. With the courses don't start until like page 35. And so the entire first section is, what credits do you need? What classes do you need to take? And it would include how we determine proficiency, whereas the policy, so it doesn't become 6 or 7 pages, says we're going to use some system that incorporates 1 to 4 with 0 to 100 to report out proficiency. To me, the level of detail of what determines proficiency, that's my understanding of policy, is bigger than the details.
So if we were to focus on the policy, can we just refocus on that 4th paragraph where the changes were made then? I do have a question about the reports to parents. Why reports to parents and not to transcripts and colleges and students? I mean, what do we say that we report to parents in the numeric grade on a 0 to 100 scale?
We have another policy about transcripts. I mean,
So we should probably see that too and review that one too.
we did, and that's what was in, I mean, the report to parents was what we approved in May, because it's not dealing with transcripts. It's dealing with like the report card that goes to the parent.
All right, but then what I'm saying is that if we're changing the transcript to reflect 0 to 100 and not 1 to 4, we need to revise that policy as well.
Sure, but so ninth graders we don't share a transcript until students are older. So this would be the more urgent policy, and then that policy would definitely need to be revised.
Okay.
But it's not urgent. It's not as this is urgent because this is talking about report cards.
Okay. I thought we were talking exclusively report to parents in 0 to 100, and then the rest, everybody else would still get 1 to 4. So thanks for clarifying that
Yeah.
that is not the case.
Well, maybe just so that other people who are reading the policy for the, why don't we just delete that to parents?
Yep.
I mean-
Reports will indicate the numeric
Yeah, I mean, it's
score.
just.
Yeah,
the
because it is
report a
confusing. You
report,
can interpret that as only
for
parents
students,
get
It's
this.
for parents, it's for grandparents, whoever wants it. Scholarship people, whatever, why list it all out? Just,
The uncle who will fit on the bleachers now.
right, right.
So why don't we just strike
If you
to
fit on the
parents?
bleachers, you get a report.
I like it.
I would just say it would be, regarding those related policies, I would add to the cross-reference of this policy, policies IKC, transcripts and academic achievement, and IKF, graduation requirements, in addition to the ones that are listed, because they are directly related to grading and reporting. They have honors stuff in there, how you get honor roll, all that stuff, and it's all got to be changed. If we're going to 0 to 100, that stuff has the 3-point ranges and stuff like that in there.
Sarah?
And not to split hairs, but there is a transcript, right? Even if they haven't graduated yet from year to year, if the student should move to another school district, they have a transcript. So if they're going to do that, they need to have something formal that can be presented elsewhere.
Definitely, but if it wasn't the case that a ninth grader was going to transfer, another school would accept their report card. Colleges won't look at report cards. They don't want them. They just want a transcript. But in the case of a transfer, there's a little bit more leniency there because we're in constant contact with that other guidance department.
Okay, so what I think I'm hearing, I can't see her. She's right behind Lindsay's head. They messed up our seats in a straight
I
line.
have a question about this policy says a grade point average will be included in the final reporting of the year in grades 9 through 12. And I thought at the last meeting we were told we don't report grade point averages.
On a 4.0 scale, we report a grade point average as 0 to 100. So it's currently, so say our seniors who are about to graduate right now, the average of all of their scores in many other schools would turn into a 3.85, a 3.92. Ours stays 0 to 100. So a student would have a 94.5 average.
That's their grade point average.
Can we clarify that in this policy?
I think that's on the transcript too, because a report card that goes home doesn't have a GPA on it. A report card that goes home is just a reporting of their current standing. So, for example, in quarter 1, we would never calculate a grade point average because grade point averages aren't calculated until the end of the year when grades are final.
It goes on the final report card of it says the final reporting of the year in grades 9 through 12. So do we do that?
So, right here. All GPAs will be calculated.
At the end of the semester, yeah.
So policy IKC addresses everything you're talking about?
Could you talk into the
IKC is a different policy that addresses that.
I think she's just looking for some clarification so people don't realize that people aren't looking for a 4-point scale. So, I mean, just some clarity around, grade point average on a 100-point scale will be included. Would that answer your question?
I'm just getting mixed signals, I guess.
So are you looking at the sentence where it says grade point average will be included in the final reporting in the year? Yes, that's accurate. So that will be on a 0 to 100 scale.
on the final report card.
On the
of
final
year,
report
not
card.
just the transcript.
Right, right.
So
But what I meant was in the policy, we wouldn't put that a grade point average is included on every report that's going out. We don't do it for quarter one or quarter two, but we do
Right,
do
right,
it at
right.
the
No,
end
I
of the
just
year.
want to clarify this sentence to say that the grade point average that is reported on the final report card of the year for high schoolers is on a, what is it, 0 to 100?
Okay.
What do you use, 0 to 100 or 1 to 100 scale?
God, if we have zero.
We hope no one has a 0, but it would be 0.
Okay. I just want to, because I understand that maybe it's clarified in the transcript policy, but if we're reporting it on the last report card of the year, I would like to clarify that here.
Other things that have come up in parent comments that I feel could be addressed in this policy are, what is the policy on retaking tests infinitely? And I wanted to recommend something to put on the table for consideration, that students below proficient, whose performance is below proficient, can continue to learn and test to become proficient by the end of the term. And I propose that idea because if you allow all students to have no deadlines and be able to retake anything, it really takes away the motivation for students to study and do their best because it counts that time. So in order to achieve the highest, because I understand that the motivation for allowing for retaking of tests is a wonderful thing. You don't want to punish kids who are having a difficult time learning something by not giving them an opportunity to learn it. We want all kids to be proficient, right? But something happens if you take away all deadlines and allow all students to retake tests that takes away from the motivation for students to try their hardest because it matters in a point in time. And you also take away from the accomplishments of the students who do study hard for and make it matter to the best of their ability, beyond proficiency.
So we have a written reassessment policy. I respectfully don't feel like that is part of this. I feel like it's a great conversation, but we don't just, we have definite deadlines. We have criteria kids have to meet in order to be able to reassess. So I think that's a huge misconception. People are not understanding how we're using reassessment. It is not available to every student. It's earned by students to reassess. But I feel like that's a separate conversation because that's a bigger.
The middle school?
I don't.
See, that's where I do feel like it's helpful to have district-wide policies, because we have a lot, maybe the misunderstandings are because it's different in every school and different with every teacher or administrator.
But I also think respectfully, we have many policies that are different at the high school than the middle school. I'm not sure. We need to be in lockstep. I agree that there needs to be some kind of commonality, but I think it could be a detriment to kids when we have no variation in our policy. To me, expectations for a 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grader should be different than a 6th and a 7th grader. And to me, that's where differences in policy
That's true.
come in.
The tricky part is that this term, proficiency-based education, this is one of those factors that's in what I'm imagining as the basket that holds it all. And I feel like it needs district leadership and message about, or maybe it's more clear from administrators for families who are entering schools, but there's discussion all over the place from parents about, frustration that there's no deadlines anymore and people can, try, as much as they want or don't want because there's, so anyway, he's got something down there.
I would also say that we recognize that we need to better communicate around this, and I know that the high school has a proficiency guide that worked on that they just finalized, I think, this past year.
Last summer. Mhm.
Right. And that we're currently now working on one K-8 to try to get some of this consistency that's in the works, right? It's not finalized yet. And definitely, when I think about the communication and the education, there's still a big piece that needs to be done, because when you think about, when I hear what you say, Lindsay, when you talk about, I don't think kids should be able to retest, but the tests that we're doing, the summative assessments, are not the traditional test anymore. And to me, when you're saying we don't want to lower the bar and we want kids to achieve more, one of the things that I want them to say to us is, with some feedback, I want to try again, right? And so there are a lot of summative assessments that are not your traditional multiple choice short answer anymore, but it might be a writing piece that is a summative assessment, whether you're in English or social studies or science. And we want kids to be able to redo that assessment. I can say that working on my PhD, I was reassessed many times by my committee of go back and do it again. So that's what we want to foster, having kids motivated to go back after they receive feedback and want to do it again and do it better. I also hear what parents are fearful of when saying, well, I'm not going to study for the test the first time, right? That's when you're thinking about the traditional kind of regurgitation test. That's what we're trying to move away from with performance assessments, pre-K through 12. But I know, Jen, that you guys have been working on that the past couple of years to change the look of those assessments and get away from questions where you just need to Google it to answer it.
What was that called for the pre-K through 8 that you guys were working on?
Proficiency guide.
Proficiency guide, and they have one at the high school that's finalized.
So ours is-
although it can always be revised, but we don't have one at the pre-K to 8. I've met with Will and Ray and Lisa, and we have a draft going, and we hope to have that finalized at some point, hopefully by next year.
So,
That
and
could
ours is on the
address some of
website. We put it up in August. So there's a proficiency-based practices family guide, and then there's a scoring addendum in it. And all the parents who came to our August meeting got a copy of that, a hard copy, and we've had it at all of our conferences too.
Naomi.
I feel like we're getting into a proficiency-based workshop.
Yep. Nope.
And this is just about the grading. And I think what I would like to get feedback specifically around is what we changed, so that when we go back for second read, we know if the board's on board with that, or if we need to take away that deadline, or because we haven't really discussed that part.
So I will give you my feedback. I would strike 2 parents, and I will strike the sentence for the class of 2025 and beyond, the proficiency level 1 to 4 will be used at the high school. But further, I know that this is something that goes into the workshop state. But I want to know what it means to say that we're using numeric grade on a 0 to 100 scale, because there are interpretations of that I will be very happy with and support, and others that I would not. So yes, I do want to change it to 0 to 100, but I do want to know, okay, are the rubrics going to have ranges of numbers 0 to 100? Are the rubrics not going to have any numbers at all? And they're just going to be used as guidelines, and the way that the 10th graders are graded now, they just have them as guidelines, and you don't get into this gray zone of subjectivity where the teachers have to pick the 83 versus the 94. That would be representative of the column where the rubric now is labeled 3. So it seems like it's a workshop type discussion, but it's very relevant to what it is that we decide. So I would say yes, I want to leave the sentence numeric grade on a 0 to 100 scale, but I don't want to leave it at that. I want to have more information about what precisely that means.
Yeah, I mean, the system that we go with, I fully anticipate Jen and Dr. Foley will bring back to us once they have determined what it is. this doesn't specifically say, neither did it previously specifically say what our 1 to 100 meant, right? So, I mean, I'm not sure that needs to be in a policy, right? I think it's a good point to say that, you know, all of the details around what does proficiency mean, and I mean, this is how are our grades going to look? What are the numbers we're going to associate with it, you know, and I think the idea around changing language and consistent language, I think we heard that, I mean, as a feedback point for you guys for the policy committee. I would be interested, you know, around the date. It sounds like they were, you know, they'd like some feedback. I think Valley is in favor of eliminating the date. I think Maddie's in favor of keeping the date. So this is where I think a straw poll might be helpful to say, you know, who likes the date and who doesn't, just so they can have a sense of, you know.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that no one interprets what I said as needing the description of what 0 to 100 scale means in this policy.
Right. You just want to know what it is.
I just want to know what it is,
Right.
because then that allows me to make the decision of whether I want a deadline or not. And you know,
yeah, I'm
do
not
I
sure
want
we're
to change
gonna-
it or not? If it's just 1 to 4 and we change at the end of the year, no, I don't want to change it, because then that's not a meaningful change.
Right.
So I do want to know at some point very soon.
Yeah. So as it relates to the date, if you are in favor of keeping a date, I guess we can say if people prefer a different date, but if you are in favor of keeping a date in the policy, if you wouldn't mind just raising your hand. So 4.
Candy went up and down.
A date to go back to 1 to 4?
Yes. 5. You got 5 now. Candy. Well, Candy's debating. But she's on the committee, so she can debate in the committee.
Keeping it, right?
Keeping a date. And opposed to the date?
Okay.
Is that 11?
That's 11.
All right, good. And I guess I'll ask the quick question. If you were in favor of the date, are you okay with this date? Or would you prefer it to be something different? Sure.
I think it already came up, but where did the date come from? Jen, did you say the date was input from the high school or input from Cynthia?
From the board.
Sorry, I mean to step on your toe. From the board, so why that number, why that particular grade?
No, the 2025.
Why that? I feel like that it was a timeline that felt manageable and doable when we talked about that yesterday at the PBE committee, so.
And that those students would have never experienced any other system besides 1 to 4. Neither will a couple of grades ahead of them,
Right,
but
still gives you more.
but that would be, they wouldn't have experienced 0 to 100, and our teachers would be ready.
There's also discussion yesterday about the opportunity to work with that class over the next 3 years. So starting, you know, consistently communicating, meeting with parents over the course of the 3 years.
So that's a potential benefit of having a date definite.
I think one of the other discussions we had is when the current junior class started with the 1 through 4, and then it was scrapped in the middle of the year, that forward movement of the teachers preparing for the 1 through 4 that was coming kind of slowed down and stopped because it was taken away. And so that's where putting a date in, you know it's still there, you still are working towards a goal.
And that's the comment that I made after we made our vote last time. I looked at Jen and Charlie and said, you know, give us your word, you're not letting it drop this time. Like, we want to move forward. So my concern is that if we don't have a date in there, then that keeps open the question of, do we believe in proficiency-based education in our district?
Well, or rather, do we believe in the 1 to 4 grading system within the PBE implementation in our system?
And I'll just clarify one thing, that in 2015, 2016, 17, we continue to develop our scoring criteria, our habits of work, our reassessment policy, but what halted was implementation. And I think everybody knows that planning is the best laid plans until you implement it with kids. And I think that's what we want to work hard to not have happen, to have people still implementing and trying things and tweaking things, because planning on paper is not the same thing.
Okay.
But I just want to say one last thing. I would hope that all the work of the PBE practices that we all value will continue. I mean, this is not saying that you don't have rubrics or scoring criteria anymore. You still work on that at all grade levels, regardless of how we grade the kids.
So as a committee, do you feel like you have the insight? And I think Lindsay's either going to show up or send you a book of information.
I feel like for the
over
most part, I just want clarification on the timeline. No timeline.
Well, I mean, you're sort of 50-50. I mean, I would say, well,
If you're gonna
6-5, right.
You're
I
gonna
mean,
vote. If you're gonna,
Yeah, if we're going to split hairs and we vote and we have weighted votes and we go for it. We can't just say, well, it was 50-50, but not really, and then they come back, and then eventually we'll have to vote anyway. So we may as
I
well.
know. But I mean, I guess my point is you don't have a strong mandate one way or the other. So do
But
with that
that's
what
not
you will.
helpful to them. I mean,
know.
they need to come back with something. So we
That's
need
what a
to give
straw vote
them a
is, right?
clear message. I think they need a clear message from the board.
You're asking for a clear message. You're asking for us to decide right now that we're going to go to 1 to 100 for the foreseeable future.
Yes.
That's the opposite of the message we sent to the administration at the last board meeting.
Right, and there was clearly
not sure I
confusion.
agree with that.
Because a lot of people who were sitting at the table, and I mean, I watched the video, and it wasn't clear. That was the first question I had. Why is there a deadline there? I never heard of anything related to a deadline discussed thoroughly at the board meeting.
We didn't discuss a date because it wasn't.
Well, it wasn't discussed, so at some point we need to discuss it. And as a board, we need to give the policy committee a clear message of what, as a board, we want to see in the policy. Otherwise, they'll just go back and work on something that is ambiguous and nebulous, come back, and then half of the people will say, no, that's not what we meant, and the other half will say, yes, that's what we meant, and we'll just go around and around forever.
Or we'll vote. I mean, we'll vote at a second read. No, I think Sarah had her hand up. You're good? Okay.
I just wanted to share that when I read this for the first time, my honest reaction was total surprise. When I saw that line, I said, where did that come from? So I think that there were just genuine misunderstandings that night. It was very late. It was 11:30 at night. There was a whole workshop. We struggled to give specific direction other than, I mean, I think Becky was coaching me down, don't start revising this thing at 11:30 at night in a board meeting. And we were giving a nod essentially to the administrators and the policy committee. And I think that nod was not just interpreted in multiple ways across the board. And I would just share that from my perspective, I was completely surprised. I thought the vote was to go to 0 to 100 in the now. I mean, it wasn't really a discussion point about the future and setting dates and going. To be honest, the idea of going back to 1 to 4 was what really shocked me, because I don't think that I would have voted to go back to 1 to 4. Like that wasn't part of my vote anyway.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I think that when we put the date in there, we wanted the discussion from the board, because I think that it was clear from the workshop that the board, the majority of the board, supported proficiency-based practices, and there was definitely a feel that some didn't want us to abandon the 1 to 4. So we debated whether to put the date in there or not at the policy committee level. And so, I think I'll speak for myself. What I thought is what it is, that the board that this is a really hard topic to grapple with, and that the board is split. And I think now you've given us a straw vote, and that the policy committee can go back and based upon your suggestions, do just another whole revision. I would suggest that we don't do any kind of vote on the first read tonight and bring back something else for the board to consider.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so our vote at the last meeting was to send the policy back to the policy committee to incorporate the recommendations of the administrators. And to me, it was very clear from the administration that we were not abandoning the 1 through 4 grading system. And that's why we're voting to give them the ability to meet with the policy committee and provide their recommendations.
Right. Okay, so you don't want to vote on this. You want to send this back to...
I think it needs more discussion. I mean, you've given us a lot of feedback tonight, and so I think to even try to summarize what you'd be voting on would be difficult. So I don't think that it would be beneficial to vote tonight. That would be my recommendation.
Could have told me that 40 minutes ago.
Well, 40 minutes ago, I wasn't sure where you were going to get, but
Does it allow us to, do we have enough board meetings left to do 2 readings before we adjourn for the summer or whatever?
We have four meetings left.
I think 3.
3.
2 in May, 2 in June.
1 in June.
1 in June so far.
June 14th, or
Is that,
May 9th.
yeah,
Add 14 days to that, so
yeah, the
23rd.
whatever the
Annual
Tri-Town meeting is.
And then 1 in June, but we could always add another. But right now, I don't think we need one.
Okay. I thought we always met right after the election. Is that right after the election? Oh, okay. I thought that was later. All right. So 3 meetings. So yeah, but we can't kick the can any farther down than, the next meeting, because then we're going to start running out of meetings. And I don't know when your policy committee meets again. Well, you guys meet on Friday.
so maybe we'll add it to the agenda.
Yeah. So we are still on this first policy review A, so we could go to the dropout prevention one and get that vote done, and then we would have to, if we wanted to continue, have a vote, because we are after 10.
Okay, so before you is the new updated revised dropout prevention policy, and anything that basically everything that's added is recommended to be added, and we are doing it in practice. We're actually doing more than that. We're meeting not just annually, but we're meeting monthly. And so I don't know if you have any, I think I'll just ask you if you have any questions. Naomi sits on the committee as the board representative.
For the dropout prevention?
Dropout prevention. Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that was one where you said that it didn't necessarily meet all that frequently. Is this a change that we're meeting?
BC, before Cynthia.
Right, before Cynthia.
BC.
We met once one year I was on it. We met not at all the next year, and now she is on top of it.
Now it's monthly.
We don't want anyone dropping out.
Okay, I was just curious. I just recall it being less rigorous, and now it sounds like
So
more.
whoever takes my spot on it.
You've driven her off the board, Cynthia. Thank you very much.
I'm sad about that.
Any other
questions on that?
questions on the additions to the plan or to the policy? Okay, so we tabled IKAB, but do we have a motion for consideration and approval for the following policy first read? JFC, dropout prevention, student withdrawal from school. Naomi? Jeremy? Oh, you have a question? Or are you voting?
I was seconding.
Oh, you were.
I just
Couldn't tell if you were questioning or voting or
my hand got
Yeah.
stuck up.
Yeah. I was looking left this time, sorry. All those in favor? Okay. So here's where we're at. We have some second reads for policy, one of them being class size. We have the agenda format, and then we have the independent educational evaluations. It is 10:17. And the other thing that's on our agenda is the executive session for the 2 contracts. Becky left.
How convenient.
So before she gets back, we should adjourn. I don't know what the timing is with the unions. Maybe Michelle knows. I don't know how time sensitive it is that we do this executive session. I'm sensitive to people trying to talk about important things late.
Right. So I do believe that the educators union has already met and voted, so they're waiting for your vote.
What? They told us that we were going to vote. They had their leadership vote,
I'm sorry.
and then we were going to vote, and then they were going to send it to their membership.
They had the leadership vote, and so they're waiting on you guys before they can do their vote. And I think the same for ESP. ESP has not had their vote yet. They're waiting for us.
So if we chose to move this to the next board meeting, because it's 10:20.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I had
so.
to take a little break.
Nope, no problem. We have second reads and we have the executive session. So do you feel like from a timing perspective, either of these are overly time sensitive, that we need to do them today? Or could we do them at our next board meeting and not do important stuff really late at night?
I think I would be fine with postponing the 2 contracts to the next one. I think our agenda is probably kind of packed on that one too, but I understand what you're saying. This is very important. And I wasn't going to have you vote on the teacher one tonight because we found, I met with Nancy today in a final review. We found a slight issue that we need to pull the committee back together for. But I just don't know. We do have I'm trying to think of a way to expedite it even for the next meeting. So we do have copies, but do we not normally let you take home
the contract before it's been approved? Yeah.
Before it's been approved. But we could have it at the office for anybody who wants to come in and preview it beforehand.
Okay, so maybe we could do a cover memo with
Yep.
the highlights if people wanted to stop in and get that info ahead of the meeting to shorten the
meeting on the 9th?
Yeah, the learning curve.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay. And second reads, you're fine moving those? Agenda, class size, and independent education evaluations. I know, sorry. See, once we approve this, then you'll get moved up to the top of the agenda.
Approve the agenda format.
If we could only vote on that.
That one should be easy.
I don't think any of those are time sensitive. The policies?
We're going to have a lot of policies at one time, but
yeah. Okay.
It's up to you.
For what it's worth, I have like no changes on the policies.
I mean, I am fine if we want to continue the conversation. We just need a vote to do it.
I think we can plow through those policies. I don't think there's a lot of topics for discussion on either one of them.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I would be happy to move these off our plate, but I don't want people to feel pressured. But not the executive session. Yeah. People comfortable with that? Okay, so we have a motion to extend the meeting. Ooh, geez, God, these things. A second. All those in favor of extending?
Just for the policies. Can you tell me?
Yeah, just for policy, not the executive session.
Who seconded it? It was Volley and
Lindsay's hand's still up. We're going to go with her.
Lindsay, thank you.
Will just wants us
And
out
was
of the
that
school.
unanimous?
No. Naomi was the actually.
Okay,
yeah.
10-1. Okay, Naomi.
Okay. So that passes. So 12B, consideration and approval of the following policies, second read.
All in favor? So class size, we met, as you know, a couple of different times, and we had a nice turnout and feel confident that this is going to
Cynthia?
Yes.
Can I
Microphone.
interject?
You certainly may.
Well, because it's a second read, I'm going to
Yes.
say we're only answering questions.
Only answering questions.
Lindsay?
I make a motion that we pass it. Can we do it?
Yeah, if we don't have any questions. So you have yeah, so we generally do them all together. So if people don't have questions on the first one, do you have a question on the first one? Yeah.
So my understanding from the meeting was that we were going to change the third paragraph under the table to read, the superintendent and the building principal shall strive to achieve the goal of a student-to-teacher ratio closest to the target ratio. So I make a motion that we amend that sentence.
So say it one more time.
So what we decided at the meeting that we would write in this policy would be the superintendent and the building principal shall strive to achieve the goal of a student-to-teacher ratio closest to the target ratio.
Oh, it says goal. So you want to say the goal of the student-to-teacher ratio closest to the target, not the student-to-teacher ratio goal closest to the target?
Right.
Yeah, I think that sounds better. I mean, I think it sounds better.
Say it one more time.
Shall strive to achieve the goal of a student-to-teacher ratio closest to the target ratio.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on that one? Agenda format, you'll see Ginny renamed 10 to be board comments and committee reports, so that would be where if there was any information sharing from the board or questions for additional information, you could ask it there, and the addition of the votes. And then IHBAI, the independent educational evaluations, which was essentially a full rewrite.
And based in law.
Based in law. We'd like to rewrite that one. No questions on any of those? So do we have a motion to consideration approval for the policies IIB, BADBA, and IHBAI? Maddie, second from Sarah.
I thought we already had Lindsay.
They were just motioning for one. I'm getting them all done at once.
Okay. Maddie and who, Sarah?
Maddie and Sarah. All those in favor? Opposed? No, right? None opposed? Thank you. All right. Public comment? We've driven everyone out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I can't comment. I'm not part
So we would take a motion to adjourn. Valley and Lindsay, in favor? Opposed, Naomi? None opposed. Thank you.